Sí. Hola.
Sí?
Se sent?
Yeah. Tom.
Buenos dias. Good morning. Good morning. Wonderful to see you all here, and welcome to Accelerating Urban Nature-Based Solutions, Barcelona 2024 conference, hosted together with Barcelona Regional. And it's a really a massive privilege and pleasure to be here together with you today. I'll hand over to Marc Montleo shortly to give the introduction to our first keynote speaker. But just a quick reflection. So you probably already know that Barcelona had a very severe drought, and it's a serious matter. And I heard there's a joke going around that they thought, let's invite some people from the north of England to organise a conference here, and we brought the rainfall with us. But honestly, I promise you, I didn't do my rain dance. So maybe later, after some beers. So I will introduce Marc very briefly. So Marc Montleo is from Barcelona Regional. He's been fundamental to organising the conference and in the Barcelona Life Lab, a staunch ally of the project, and a long-standing professional working on nature-based solutions and green infrastructure. Marc, thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the conference. I would like to introduce Maria Buigas. For me, it's a pleasure because first of all, we're friends, and second, professionally, we worked together for 14 years, so it's a privilege to have her here. She has a very tight agenda and complicated week for the officials in Barcelona. She's an architect, a master's degree in Columbia University. We worked together at Barcelona Regional for almost 14 years, and now she's the chief architect of our city. So she's thinking on the present, but also on the future. So I think that many things that we will talk those 3 days here at the conference will be inspiring. I hope they will be inspiring for her and her team and for the rest of the city officials. So I will pass the floor to Maria, which is an honor to have her here today. And thank you, all of you, for being here. Thanks.
Good morning, buenos días, bon dia. I asked Marc to make my short speech, I promise will be short, in Spanish because I will be faster and much more accurate in my own language. So I'm sorry for the English speakers, but I think there is a translation. Bueno, primero de todo, bienvenidos a la ciudad. Sé que ayer por la tarde los recibieron en el Ayuntamiento de Barcelona, en lo que nosotros llamamos la casa grande, la casa de todos. Hoy para mí es un placer, comentaba Marc, que efectivamente nosotros trabajamos 14 años juntos en Barcelona Regional, donde en un equipo pluridisciplinar yo aprendí, muchas veces me dicen, ¿eres arquitecto? Digo, bueno, con connotaciones. Y siempre digo, si tuviera que decir un animal, soy oso o osa, hormiguero, es decir, soy una mezcla de bastantes cosas. Y trabajando con perfiles como Marc, que es biólogo, y otros tantos pluridisciplinares en Barcelona Regional, aprendí que el futuro se construye en el presente. Así que, de manera muy breve, les compartiré algunas de mis preocupaciones, ahora que tengo la responsabilidad, efectivamente, de no solo lidiar o trabajar con los proyectos que están en marcha. En mi cargo se hereda toda una agenda, se matiza, se añade y se traspasa. Y si alguien no lo entiende en mi sitio, tiene un problema. Así que en ese añadir, matizar y traspasar, yo tengo que, con los equipos y de una manera, digamos, plural y coral, tenemos que definir en el presente aquello que nos tiene que poner en las mejores condiciones de futuro para esta ciudad. Y en ese sentido, cuando yo llegué, este es un cargo que uno no se postula. A una o a uno, soy la primera mujer en el cargo, a uno o a una lo vienen a buscar. Así que cuando te vienen a buscar, la ventaja es que puedes decidir que me vinieron a buscar por mi trayectoria, así que en principio no tengo que demostrar nada. Ahora lo que hay que ponerse es a trabajar, y eso es en lo que estamos. ¿Y qué le dije yo al alcalde? El principal reto que tenemos es que para ese futuro, en el presente, tenemos que acelerar e intensificar los cambios de los que hablamos hace mucho tiempo. Ya hace mucho tiempo que hablamos de cambio climático, de sostenibilidad, de adecuar nuestras ciudades a nuevas condiciones para, como siempre, intentar mejorar la vida de los ciudadanos que las compartimos y que las habitamos. Pero hace mucho tiempo que hablamos y hacemos mucho papel y que hemos hecho muchas pruebas piloto y seguimos haciendo pruebas piloto, que a veces para mí son un poco la excusa de decir nos atrevemos a saltar a la piscina de una vez y pasar del piloto a la escalabilidad de esas propuestas. Pero ese salto implica fundamentalmente, desde mi punto de vista, no solo el qué técnico, que todos los que están aquí saben sobradamente cuáles son las soluciones técnicas para muchos temas, sino el cómo lo hacemos. Y en ese cómo hay implícito cómo cambiamos nuestras organizaciones y la manera en que hacemos esas cosas internamente para que devengan una normalidad totalmente interiorizada en nuestras arquitecturas, digamos, organizativas. Y para mí ese es el gran reto del presente. Cuando a mí me preguntan ¿qué se está imaginando el arquitecto jefe de la ciudad de Barcelona para el futuro? ¿Qué grandes transformaciones? La respuesta es esas transformaciones que hemos visto desde los 80 y que Barcelona ha ido explicando por el mundo, asociadas a los Juegos Olímpicos y posteriormente a otro acontecimiento y grandes transformaciones, digamos, urbanas, se han acabado prácticamente. Ahora nos dedicaremos yo siempre le digo al alcalde, nos dedicaremos a jugar al Tetris, es decir, a cambiar piezas de sitio, buscando el mejor contexto, nuevas oportunidades por el cambio y la reutilización de piezas existentes, pero principalmente en cambiar condiciones. Para mí, de la máxima responsabilidad que nosotros tenemos es sobre el espacio público, pero respecto a la edificación también es de qué manera conseguimos escalar la restauración, la rehabilitación y la regeneración de nuestro parque edificado existente. Porque la ciudad, digamos, sus 100 kilómetros cuadrados no tiene espacio de crecimiento. Barcelona tiene que hacer el salto metropolitano, pero no ese salto metropolitano del papel, que todos hablamos de la ciudad de facto, que es una ciudad que supera los límites administrativos de esos 100 kilómetros cuadrados y se va a una ciudad de 5.600.000 kilómetros cuadrados, no porque lo digamos en el papel, sino con el convencimiento de que tenemos que ser líderes o liderar de una manera generosa un cambio en la mirada de ese ámbito. Porque de lo que ustedes van a hablar en estos próximos 3 días, hay muchas de estas cuestiones que si no las tratamos a escala metropolitana o regional no tendrán ningún sentido. Tendremos determinadas cuestiones que podremos, por descontado, hacer, entomar, actuar desde la escala, digamos, de nuestra ciudad, pero definitivamente cuando hablamos de espacios naturales, cuando hablamos de agua, cuando hablamos de energía, cuando hablamos de determinados vectores, si la escala no es mucho mayor que nos supera, poco podremos hacer. En este sentido, para mí, en la agenda, si me dijeran cuáles son los ítems más importantes. Por un lado, tenemos la responsabilidad y estamos trabajando de adecuar las intervenciones tanto en nuestro litoral como en la parte que la ciudad toca con el Parque Natural de Collserola, es decir, en la parte, digamos, lo que nosotros llamamos mar y montaña, que son los 2 límites que tenemos. Si en los 80 y 90 la ciudad se abrió al mar, la ciudad no está dispuesta a renunciar a esa apertura al mar, pero tiene que tomar conciencia de que no podemos relacionarnos de la misma manera con el mar como lo hemos hecho hasta ahora. Y, por tanto, estamos tomando cambios en la definición de ese litoral que tiene en cuenta las nuevas condiciones, porque no queremos renunciar a esa proximidad del mar, a ese disfrute del mar, pero tenemos que ser conscientes de que ese mar, digamos, también tiene unas condiciones que tenemos que ser capaces de absorber. Y no absorber y por eso muy adecuado con las soluciones nature-based, no las soluciones, podríamos decir, y ahora que nadie se enfade, ingenieriles, tradicionales que todos hemos visto, sino encontrar ese lenguaje nature-based que significa darle el espacio suficiente, acercarnos de una determinada manera, ese trabajo en el fringe, que yo no les tengo en esa barrera, en esa membrana, que yo no tengo que explicarles a ustedes que saben sobradamente cómo funciona. Lo mismo nos pasa en Collserola, un parque natural que no solo para la gente que vive en Barcelona, sino para todo el área metropolitana, es su espacio, digamos, natural de referencia, es un parque natural, pero también tiene una componente muy importante de salud y de disfrute. Al mismo tiempo, a nadie se le escapa que en nuestras condiciones climáticas tiene un riesgo de que en un verano eso se convierta en la hoguera de San Juan más grande que hayamos visto jamás. Y es nuestra responsabilidad evitar eso. Entonces, la aproximación que nosotros estamos haciendo en los límites de la ciudad tiene que ver con esa comprensión de qué manera vamos a tener que adaptar nuestras soluciones construidas a las nuevas condiciones. Y a nivel estrictamente del espacio público, yo planteé una cosa que al principio creo que todo el mundo esperaba. Lo llamé un libro de estilo del espacio público, un nuevo libro de estilo. Y creo que al principio mucha gente me miraba como un libro. O sea, ella va a hacer un libro. Y a medida que pasaban las semanas tuve que preparar un PowerPoint en el que ponía, no estoy hablando de un libro, estoy hablando de un proceso que tiene que recuperar una cultura compartida entre todos los internamente del ayuntamiento, porque hay muchos agentes distintos en el ayuntamiento que tienen responsabilidades y competencias sobre la definición y el mantenimiento de ese espacio público, y al mismo tiempo porque ese libro estilo, que para mí es un proceso y una cultura de entender y hacer, también tenemos que ser capaces de transmitirlo fuera de la organización para todos aquellos profesionales que también contribuyen con sus diseños y sus propuestas en la definición de este espacio público. Una cultura que esta ciudad se caracterizó y le dieron premios internacionalmente en los años 80 y 90 por unos proyectos de redefinición del espacio público que pusieron la accesibilidad y la calidad material arriba de todo en la agenda. Eran las prioridades máximas en los criterios. Accesibilidad universal y la materialidad, la calidad de la materialidad. En el barrio más rico de la ciudad y en el barrio más pobre de la ciudad, el espacio público tiene exactamente las mismas características. Eso en ese momento, se pueden imaginar ustedes que la modernidad va de pavimento, de piedra, de construir. Creo que todos estaremos de acuerdo que hoy eso no se puede trasladar y seguir manteniendo esa inercia. Tenemos que decidir colectivamente cuáles son los nuevos criterios que de manera universal podemos garantizar en el conjunto de la ciudad, esos espacios públicos, y que tienen que ver, seguramente estarían de acuerdo conmigo, en que tienen que ver que si el agua para nosotros, en un extremo porque llueve demasiado concentrado, o por falta de agua porque no llueve, el agua es un vector que tiene que estar en el centro del diseño del espacio público y, por tanto, cómo a través de ese diseño somos capaces de aprovechar esa poca agua o ese exceso de agua en determinados momentos y cómo podemos gestionar esto de esta manera. Necesitamos reducir temperaturas porque necesitamos incrementar el confort de esos espacios públicos. Ese agua nos va a permitir una cosa que aquí es un lujo, que es el verde. A nosotros no nos toca verde, nos toca más bien marrón o beige, pero si queremos tener verde, el verde va a venir desde una gestión inteligente del agua. No vendrá por él mismo, no nos lo podremos permitir. Y, por lo tanto, en ese ejercicio de modificar cuáles son los elementos principales que tienen que seguir alimentando esa cultura de calidad del espacio público como, yo diría casi como exigencia que el Gobierno de la ciudad no está dispuesto a renunciar, porque es aquello que nos garantiza la cohesión social, porque es un mensaje lo suficientemente potente que ese espacio público, ese espacio de todos, es para todos los ciudadanos de la ciudad y eso es lo que nos iguala, por decirlo de alguna manera. Es evidente que tenemos que cambiar y tenemos que ir adaptando a mayor velocidad y con mayor impacto los criterios y las condiciones en las que diseñamos ese espacio público. Yo les deseo que en estos 3 días nos aporten en sus debates y conclusiones propuestas, ideas que podamos recoger. Siempre es bueno escuchar lo que hacen en otros sitios, cómo se hace, qué problemas tienen, sobre todo compartir las dificultades, las historias bonitas. Ya sabemos que son agradables de oír, pero seguramente nos ayudan a todos el compartir las dificultades y los rozamientos que hay que superar precisamente para cambiar marcos mentales, para cambiar procesos, para mover a la gente de su zona de confort. Espero que sean muy productivos estos 3 días y deseo que tengan una buena estancia en la ciudad. Muchísimas gracias.
So Maria has to leave because they have a large competition, as was mentioned, and we wish you all the best in the competition. We now have a short presentation from the European Commission. So I'd like to introduce Fleur. So Fleur is a policy officer from the European Commission, and her work contributes to the European Union Research and Innovation Strategy, programme development and implementation in the domain of biodiversity and systemic nature-based solutions, in support of European Green Deal objectives. So notably, she works on economics for biodiversity and transformative change, so some themes that are really close to the Conexus project. Her academic research focused on environmental governance, in particular around pollution crisis and waste management. She has experience of working in the private sector, in the public sector at municipal level, and also previously worked at the European Commission's DG GROW on chemicals legislation and work on circularity of plastics. So, Fleur, welcome if you join the floor, and I think if you don't have any slides, no, it's just a presentation. So, warm welcome, please.
Thank you very much, Tom. Thank you, and good morning, everyone. It's a real privilege and pleasure to be here. So as Tom mentioned, my name is Fleur van Oostrom-Guimel. I'm from the Directorate General on Research and Innovation, and one of our main jobs is to draft the Horizon Europe work program, and then on the other hand, to feed back all of the project outcomes back to our policy colleagues, for example, in DG Environment and DG Klima. And the unit I work for looks after climate science, biodiversity and nature-based solutions, but also environmental observations. So today I will say a couple of words on, first of all, the context, so the policy context within, for example, which Conexus was funded, as well as more generally R&I on NBS at Commission level. And then I will talk a little bit about the European Commission's EU SALAC NBS policy dialogue, which has kicked off recently. So first of all, to say a few words on the policy context, I just want to zoom out and frame it from the global perspective, first of all. So we're all well aware that the COP15 at the end of 2022 agreed on the global biodiversity framework. And this framework provides the real sort of foundation for global action on biodiversity, complementing the Paris Agreement for climate. So zooming into the policies that are specifically relevant for NBS and especially for the urban dimension, the framework sets out that urgent action is necessary by 2030 on minimizing the impacts of climate change on biodiversity and to build resilience, especially through nature-based solutions, to enhance nature's contribution to people, including ecosystem services, again with an emphasis on nature-based solutions, to significantly enhance green spaces and urban planning for human health and well-being, as well as for biodiversity. And of course, the integration of biodiversity in decision-making at all levels, including into urban policies, regulation, and planning. So these targets really provide the hook to scale up nature-based solutions globally. And they're, of course, very relevant for the discussions that we'll have in the next 3 days. So most governments are already well underway to update their national biodiversity strategies and action plan that translate these targets and goals into national policy and regulation. Then zooming into the EU policy context, so the EU has increasingly been focusing on biodiversity as part of its broader sustainability agenda. This includes initiatives aimed at biodiversity conservation, ecosystem restoration, sustainable land use, sustainable urban planning, and of course the implementation of NBS. The key EU framework is the European Green Deal, and at the core of the Green Deal is the inclusion of all sectors, so the economy as well as society, in terms of achieving the objectives which set Europe on a path to a green transition. In terms of the strategies and policies under the Green Deal, we have the biodiversity strategy, which aims to put Europe's biodiversity back on a path to recovery by 2030 for the benefit of people, the climate, and the planet. We have the proposed EU Nature Restoration Law, which is currently being held ransom by the Council. The law sets out that until 2030, there should be no net loss in urban green space or tree canopy cover in sort of urban ecosystem areas. And beyond 2030, it sets out for an increased trend in both of these, so the overall green space and tree canopy cover. Other EU policies which are extremely relevant, of course, include the Green Infrastructure Strategy, the urban greening plans, and sort of the EU urban agenda more generally. For climate, we have the adaptation strategy and the 2030 and now also 2040 climate targets, and various fiscal and financial policies which promote sustainability, including, of course, the taxonomy regulation. Then, sort of moving on to the NBS and RNI, so at EU level, we have, off the back of these policies, invested a lot into biodiversity with hundreds of projects promoting sort of or supporting the implementation of the biodiversity strategy. At EU level, we've also committed more broadly to a 7.5% target of annual spending set at the long-term EU's budget, the MFF, the multi-annual financial framework, to biodiversity objectives, and this will increase to 10% in 2026 and 2027. And so these apply to the Horizon Europe funding streams, but also the LIFE program, InvestEU, cohesion funding, sort of all the EU's funding instruments. And this target, of course, plays a big role in creating an enabling regulatory environment, but also an enabling market environment to achieve the biodiversity goals that we have, and of course to scale up NBS. Then to zoom into the NBS project portfolio we have under Horizon 2020 and Horizon Europe, we've invested approximately 665 million euros in over 70 different NBS projects, counting over 1,300 partners in over 70 different countries. So these projects really test and showcase the benefits of NBS in over 70 different cities within the EU, but of course also beyond. And on top of this, we also have 20 large-scale demonstration projects which showcase sort of the benefits beyond urban areas. And of course, notable within this project portfolio, the two EU-funded projects, Conexus and Interlace, which have delivered significant results in the context of co-creating nature-based solutions to support the restoration of urban ecosystems and to address local but also global societal challenges, both in EU and SALAC cities. And these projects have really strengthened international cooperation on NBS between the regions by, for example, connecting researchers, policymakers, local communities, the private sector, and developers, and Tom will talk more about this morning. And all this R&I is, of course, important for making the case for nature-based solutions, to convince decision makers, policymakers to implement them, whether they're government representatives, urban planners, or the private sector. And we have a wealth of knowledge which demonstrates how well NBS work and how in a lot of cases they are superior to using alternatives due to the multiple benefits that they provide. And so now the focus is really on implementation, the implementation side of NBS. And so now I'll talk a little bit about the EU-LAC NBS policy dialogue. So the Commission actively pursues these policy dialogues and outreach activities, both at EU and global level, to foster engagement, develop a broad knowledge base, and also to stimulate market supply and demand. And it aims to deepen the EU's engagement with certain regions. So to do so, the Commission collaborates closely with external contractors and experts to support these policy dialogues of mutual interest, for example, through the elaboration of studies and the organization of dialogue meetings or other public diplomacy events and activities. And in the area of biodiversity and NBS, but also for climate science and Earth observations, the preferred approach to cooperation on research and innovation at EU level is through these multilateral dialogues rather than sort of bilateral dialogues. And LAC is, of course, a very strategic region for the EU and a natural partner to collaborate on in tackling environmental challenges, especially due to LAC's mega biodiverse landscapes where fighting biodiversity is absolutely crucial. Biodiversity loss, sorry. On the other hand, overall, the work done on NBS has proven that the better integration of NBS in global or strategies globally result in a range of societal benefits, including contributions to more holistic approaches to climate mitigation and adaptation, but also disaster risk reduction, and of course biodiversity protection and restoration. And so the Commission has embarked on one of these policy dialogues with LAC, specifically in the area of nature-based solutions. And this policy dialogue seeks to move towards a more strategic, targeted, and EU-wide approach to a partnership with the LAC region. And this, of course, doesn't mean a Eurocentric approach at all, as, for example, the importance of weaving through local and indigenous knowledge is really at the forefront of importance when we speak about biodiversity or nature-based solutions. In terms of how the dialogue came about, so besides the global and EU policy context for the initiative, better cooperation on NBS between the regions was called for in joint communications on EU-LAC relations, as well as certain council conclusions already dating back to 2019. The initiative was also born out of the priorities that are stated in the 2021-2023 EU SALAC Strategic Roadmap for Research and Innovation. And the next roadmap for beyond 2024 is also currently being drafted. And again, NBS are identified as a priority area for the next time frame. The work also builds on previous initiatives, such as by the Commission and the Brazilian Ministry of Science, called the EU-Brazil Sector Dialogue on NBS, which already started in 2015. And it, of course, builds on the outcomes of many NBS projects, including Interlace and Conexus. So the overall objective of the dialogue is really strengthening the exchange between the EU and LAC on NBS and their benefits to society, to the economy, to the environment. And then more specific objectives include exploring common approaches to NBS to increase knowledge and to promote a better understanding of what NBS are, to achieve more sustainable and resilient societies. So we really aim to ensure that knowledge on NBS is increased among key stakeholders across the regions through these planned outreach activities. So how are we working on achieving this? For the moment, under the policy dialogue, the organization of a bi-regional conference and the elaboration of a study are foreseen. The conference will be held on the 26th and 27th of June over 2 half days in Brussels, and this will be a hybrid meeting. The meeting will foster an exchange of experiences, so sharing knowledge, best practices, and expertise on successful NBS. And it will also look at what kind of barriers were encountered and how they were overcome with what strategies. Given that this is a policy dialogue and not a technical one, the focus is not so much on NBS as an intervention per se, but also on the context, so be it social, economic, policy that facilitates or hinders this implementation. And the meeting really aims to create a momentum of cooperation between the two regions. And then we have a study in preparation by the experts, and this will investigate the state of play around NBS in both regions, looking at different ecosystems for intervention and explore possible pathways for cooperation. And these initial initiatives, so the study and the conference, will also inform the future work and actions of this dialogue, which is planned to continue beyond these immediate actions. And the outcomes of the work will be used and feed into the work, including that of the UN's Convention on Biological Diversity, especially ahead of the negotiations of COP16 in October, as well as other work done, for example, under EPIS. So I'm extremely happy to be here with you for the next 3 days and to really learn from your expertise and in turn to feed this back to the work that we do at EU level. And of course to exchange more on the policy dialogue in more detail, which many of you are contributing to already. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Fleur. And may I take the opportunity to thank the European Commission and all of the other funders that have contributed directly to make the Conexus project and the whole programme possible. The team with Giles Donyon, Fred Nukas, our desk officer, and former colleague Tiago Freitas have been fundamentally important in driving this agenda. I've worked with several European Commission DGs and teams in the past, and this group is really passionate and really determined, and it's great to work with, you know, the civil service of the European Union that drives forward these initiatives, and to hear that commitment to increase the contributions to biodiversity to 10 billion? Million? 10%, sorry, 10%, sorry, yeah. From 7.5% to 10%, I think you said, yeah. It's a really meaningful commitment. It's a long-term dialogue under the multi-annual financial framework. These are the things that make our work possible, and so we're very grateful. Thank you very much indeed. I think I have some slides. I'm hoping the guys from Trace-On can put my slides up. So what I'm going to do is give a brief introduction to the Conexus project and also to the conference. Give you a warm welcome to the conference. Shortly we'll be hearing from the various work packages and cities involved in the project in 2 sessions. And we have plenty of coffee, we have plenty of snacks, keep you moving. And then obviously this afternoon we're all looking forward to some site visits to see Barcelona and to understand some of the challenges in terms of climate changes. We've heard from the mountains to the sea in a region like this that face significant drought and also dense urbanisation, many tourists. Class ourselves as tourists as well as professionals. We have an impact in the city. So to come and see what they're doing in terms of transformation, I think is a really nice opportunity. Okay, so the main thing here is just to mention the hashtag. Please help us to publicise your dialogue. This is your conference, you know, and this event is only possible with your full participation. And so I'd like us all to celebrate that as much as possible. So, all one word, urban nature connects us. It's the theme that's run through the project from the very beginning and even into the title, this idea of connecting together, which actually came about through a visit to Sao Paulo, through the airport, arriving in the where you make your connections. And it just seems very apt for a dialogue between the European Union and Latin America. So, 3 days, amazing. Just some quick kind of key figures and details about the project to begin. As I said, we're funded as a research innovation action through the EU's Horizon 2020 programme. We're now into Horizon Europe, so I guess we're kind of at the end of the programme and at the beginning of a new one. We have 5 million in European funding, 5 million euros, and many other co-finance sources as well. And particularly in Brazil, significant contributions from Brazil, but also in the cities like Turin that has made a major contribution to the investment in the green infrastructure and the nature-based solutions, you know, millions. So it's actually, when you count everything up, it's more like 11 million euros activity. And we have 33 partners, so it's a good job that we have these resources. It's a complicated project, I have to be honest, with many working parts and many people, as you see today. And we've regularly had, at the kind of seminars and events, you know, getting up to 100 people participating, with a lot of support from our coordinators and our meetings team in Living Cities and others as well, and EUKN. So the theme overall, co-producing nature-based solutions and restored ecosystems through transdisciplinary nexus for urban sustainability. What on earth does that mean? It's a load of jargon. If you asked a common Sheffielder, a normal Sheffield person, what does that mean? Well, transdisciplinarity, it's all about working across the sectors, working between the public, private, third and academic sectors. To jointly define the research methods and the questions, and also to pursue the opportunities together. But the fundamental thing really that underpins all of this is that EU-LAC dialogue, strengthening international cooperation on sustainable urbanisation through nature-based solutions. And there's 4 sort of strands in our project to that, and I'll be speaking a bit more about that on day 3. Things like mobility of skilled and talented people, shared infrastructures, including the kinds of pilots that we're going to see later and that Maria was introducing. So our aim has been, and I believe we do, co-produce structure and promote access to the shared, contextualised knowledge, the evidence if you like, needed to support the cities and the communities to co-create nature-based solutions. And I won't go into the definition of nature-based solutions now because I think we've all rehearsed it many times, but it's responding to societal challenges by mimicking natural processes and working together at the local level. And by doing that, we aim to restore urban ecosystems and to drive the required step change in urban policy and practice in European and Latin American countries. We define MBS quite broadly. The tip of the iceberg is the physical manifestation that you see, is the rain garden or the suds. But that's not enough. We need to think about the social process that surrounds these interventions. Some of the interventions aren't physical at all. Actually, you know, we can look at green infrastructure planning and network management at the city scale. And so, you know, that social process is fundamentally important. We also must define nature-based solutions in terms of the co-benefits and particularly biodiversity and ecosystem services. I truly believe that there is no nature-based solutions without biodiversity improvement and quantified biodiversity improvement, and that's challenging. We also look at nature-based solutions in the global and city context, the deep understanding of the knowledge of the systems and the processes that surround why we're doing what we're doing. And I believe that we're responding rather than solving. You know, if you asked a civil engineer from the 1950s when they're building a concrete tunnel to pipe a river underground, they thought they were solving things, and maybe today we think we're solving challenges, and in 50 years' time, maybe we'll look back with a bit of doubt and say, maybe we made some mistakes. So we're responding, not solving. And how we can do that best is working quickly around this cycle, effectively, but carefully, between evidence-based policy, policy influence in practice, and practice creating new opportunities for research and innovation. And at the heart of all of that, I think in most EU-funded nature-based solutions projects now is the ambition that citizens and communities are fundamentally in the centre of that process. And in our project, we've endeavoured that the cities and the life labs in particular, I'll come on to the life labs, are absolutely central to the definition of the measures of success, the indicators and the programs to monitor and evaluate nature-based solutions. That those cities have to, if we're going to make any progress in gathering meaningful and shared data, that process has to be owned by the people that are closest to the societal challenges. It needs to be close to the sociopolitics, fundamentally. So as I said, it's not just at the micro level, but we can, of course, include this, let's say, urban acupuncture, nature-based solutions on the top right-hand side, these local urban centres. They can be micro-scale things like small rain gardens or green fences. Through the meso-scale, we might be connecting together habitats through corridors, through green radials, through, for instance, I mean, Brussels, you think about the very important green space around the city. But then also at the macro level, we're thinking about the large habitats are in peri-urban areas, the catchment restoration, for instance, catchment management using more nature-based processes. And we can think of all of that within a broad spatial network. But our project, more than that, even more than that spatial network, is about the groups of people that drive these processes. So I'm really, humbled and honoured to work with such an amazing group of people from every sector, from NGOs, academia, cities, social enterprises and private sector, SMEs and so on. And we have a growing team. The process started a long time ago, and there are particular highlights shown here from Lisbon, from Bogota, and from Rome, as we were formulating the project. And then, of course, we hit COVID. And between 2020 and 2022, we all faced this challenge of working online together and trying at the same time to strive for a new, far-reaching and, let's say, ambitious concept for nature-based thinking. And so nature-based thinking going beyond nature-based solutions for a more transformative change. And it feels like there was a zeitgeist because urban nature became so strongly on everybody's minds in terms of access to green space as we had that taken away from us. If you were lucky enough to have a garden, you probably spent a lot more time in your garden. Some of the lockdowns in some of our cities were really strict. I mean, so strict that you couldn't even drive to the shops to get your food. You had to, my cousin, for instance, was living in Bogota at the time, and his mental well-being during that period really plummeted. He's since returned back to Manchester. And the sense of like desperation to re-engage and connect with nature became so fundamental to all of our lives, I believe, and therefore urban green spaces became centrally important to many, many people as a kind of counterbalance to all the wonderful technology of using Zoom and Teams and whatever for exchanges. I'm just going to quickly touch on some of our main strategic research and innovation themes. So when we set out, we had a series of questions, and at this kind of project level, we're going beyond hypotheses. There's so much involved in this transdisciplinarity that you're bringing together many different research questions, so it can be a bit tricky to pin these down, but we have committed to it, and I believe we're pursuing these themes as effectively as we can. So firstly, and you might say, well, this is kind of fundamental, right? Is that really a research gap? Well, it turns out it is. If you look in the literature and you look in practice, we still have a lack of understanding of the genuine biodiversity benefits of nature-based solutions interventions. The retrospective retrofitting of urban green back into cities is particularly challenging to understand the relationship, and particularly around management and maintenance and the relationship between these interventions and the services they deliver. So yeah, what are the biodiversity benefits? Nature-based thinking, is it a useful mindset for this kind of cross-sector working? Is it helpful to people that span boundaries, people that move? I can think of a number of folks in this room that have moved between sectors and are pursuing nature-based solutions, maybe for a few years in the private sector and then coming into academia, from academia into practice, but particularly working with colleagues to pursue these kind of long-term programs. And so we've put quite an emphasis on that, and we'll be picking up in the city exchanges that follow. We've looked at the possibilities of using iterative assessment frameworks and co-definition of measures of success or indicators for MBS benefits, for the co-benefits that we all strive or sometimes promise for our funders. And as I said before, you know, if the cities, the citizens and the stakeholders are involved in defining those methods and collating the data, we have much more success. We have much more prospects for success, should I say, in terms of long-term monitoring and management of data. But can we also develop new methods and new models for the now famous phrase of urban living labs? Some of the people in this room have been fundamentally involved in the living lab debate for a long time. Our project, we coined the phrase life labs primarily because we wanted to contribute to the real life, to come close to the cities. And the methodology for that has been for a kind of triad of universities, NGOs, and at the city level, and to drive their own agenda, to set their own strategic learning outcomes. Sometimes that's worked, sometimes it's been less successful. It's not easy. And then finally, on co-producing knowledge, can we use the opportunity of research and innovation to strive for practical implementation? If you look 10, 15 years ago, it wasn't really a key focus in research projects to deliver investment on the ground. You know, to actually restore ecosystems on the ground. And I think if we step back, we can think, is that the right place to do that? You know, arguably in some cases it works really well. You have 2 years worth of COVID, it gets in your way, I can promise, because it's kind of difficult to visit your sites and so on. But at the same time, you will hear many cases of the pilots, we call them, or demonstrators. You might hear people talk about demonstrators where we're seeking to realise changes on the ground. And the final one is around valuation and values. So what are the values of nature-based solutions? And I think this does come close to economics, but it's not just about monetary valuation. We're looking at the broad range of social, cultural, economic and environmental impacts of MBS. So, as I said before, this conference, this whole, let's call this a project in a way, has only been possible through your contributions and your full participation. And I urge you to fully participate and then make the most of the 3 days. And so it's a kind of thank you in advance for that. But also, we owe a debt of gratitude to all these wonderful partners that have been involved in the Conexus project. I would also like to extend a warm welcome to our partners from the Sister Interlace project, which is, they've come mob-handed, to use a colloquialism. The Interlace project is very heavily represented here, and we'll hear from their wonderful work as well, spanning Europe and Latin America. So it's too many to mention this logo soup. You're all represented in there anyway. So the programme, and I'm going to kind of wrap up fairly quickly with this. On day one, we're going to hear primarily about exchanges between the cities and the work packages and how those kind of, illustrating that cross-sectoral work and the interdisciplinarity with some examples from the various different cities and key kind of outcomes from the work packages. As I said before, we have plenty of coffee breaks and plenty of time to relax and chat, so you won't just be talked at all the time. We'll also have opportunity for questions and answers. My understanding that one of our participants that was here yesterday had not arrived this morning. They may have arrived since, and then, so we may have to swap work package 3 and work package 4 and possibly do work package 3 after coffee. So watch this space and forgive me if we have to change the schedule a little bit. So yeah, we will be hearing from our broad range of cities this morning. We'll have chance for chat, and really that's why we come to these events rather than just go on Zoom meetings, yeah? You come to meet people, and we've made a big emphasis on catering, is all I can say. Yeah, so by the end of the week, I think we'll be all ready for a bit of a break from that too. So then we'll come back for hearing from the last three work packages, including the kind of overall project level, illustrated again with some city perspectives. And then we'll have the opportunities, question and discussion with all of us together. Then we get to go and see some sites, you know, and hopefully we'll start to see some sustainable drainage systems working in practice. So this is a slide I use with my students from our landscape management course. I lead our master's programme on landscape management and stewardship at the University of Sheffield. And I have the pleasure of taking them to many urban green spaces in the city that don't quite look as attractive as this. But this is a suds basin, and it's part of a broader network, and we'll be seeing some of these things as we walk around the city, along with other pilots as well. So, yeah, so then tomorrow, and we assemble downstairs after lunch. So I think we said 2 o'clock, is that right? It's come off the bottom. So yeah, after lunch we'll assemble downstairs and we'll be given instructions. I think we'll probably split it into smaller groups for walking around the city. No buses, all sustainable. Day 2. And let's be honest, a lot of you have come for this because it's your bit. It's your presentations, and really, really interesting and exciting to see such a broad range of presentations and contributions. We were not overwhelmed, but delighted at the number of abstract and hugely competitive, great quality contributions. And you know, you don't organise these things to be popular, because many people, you know, they don't quite make the cut in the end, and there's only so many slots, but we have a lot of talks and a lot of space. So we have 4 sessions on governance, politics and planning, organised by Ian Buis and others, with a keynote speaker, Sander van de Jaak, joining from Scotland. Social, cultural and educational priorities, and they're facilitated by Orsa Odesang from SLU, with a keynote speaker, Noor Aslin Binti Yahya. And then ecological and environmental session organised by Cinnamon Dobbs from University of Connecticut and Universidad Mayo, together with Kumalachu Yeshatella as a keynote speaker. And then the economics, values and work session facilitated by Daniel Kozak at Conexus, with Ophélie Drought, from UNEP, giving a talk on some work that's been done from the Latin American perspective. So, the sessions are all roughly structured the same. Please stick to your times. That's the key message here, because otherwise you're going to miss your coffee breaks, and you don't want to do that. Yeah, to take time to reflect, have a moment, enjoy the city. There's a garden here. We have a wonderful space. I don't know if there's Campanula. I'm sure you have Campanula in Barcelona. Then on day 3, we'll just make sure that any announcements, lost property and things are covered, because day 3 is the final day, and the Friday. But we'll be hearing from our keynote speaker, Ophélie Drought, about the nature-based solutions for climate-resilient cities, and particularly the challenges and issues around this process of accelerating urban nature-based solutions. When finance is primarily going to rural areas, it's really challenging. So hearing more about what we can do to make, to promote climate adaptation and biodiversity responses in cities when the funding isn't always there is going to be really interesting to hear about. We'll have the reports back from the workshops and summaries, more lunch, and then we'll finally have a summing up from Alexis Vasquez, Federica Risi and Thomas Randrup. And we should be all done with, and we won't just send you off without any. So then you get some more lunch, and then you're free to enjoy the city for the rest of the afternoon. We have a packed agenda, and hence I just kind of reiterate, make the most of the time. It's a little bit like a wedding, you know, you spend all your time organising, and then it's finally here, and it just goes like that. So I hope you get the chances to have the dialogues and conversations that you planned. And I thank you in advance for participating. Thank you so much. So now I would like to welcome Corinna, Corinna from CREAF, so our local rep. Please come to the front. We have city dialogues, so with work package 1, it's with Bogota and Opla. If you'd like to come and join the front, and then I'll hand over to Corinna. We'll get the slides organised. Thank you so much, Corinna, for doing this. I'll stay on hand for any issues. Would you like some water? That's a really bad jug. Okay, don't slip on the water.
Yeah, okay, don't worry. I like skating, don't worry. Thank you. Good morning. I'm very pleased to facilitate this session, the first part of the session today. Somebody told me once that the cities provide the best settings to tell a story. So now we are here to listen to the stories of, in the first part of the session, of Bogota, Santiago, Torino, and Lisbon. And we really hope that with these stories, we will help you and guide you, motivate you in your further research and nature-based thinking. Now, I would like to open the floor and introduce our first speakers. We have here with us John Porter, OPLA coordinator and Work Package 1 coordinator, and also Diana Ruiz-Rios, researcher at Alexander von Humboldt University in Bogota Institute. And she's also the coordinator of Bogota Life Lab. And welcome. I would like to ask you from the very beginning, what is the context of your research and the Life Lab in Bogota? Do you have a pointer?
We have a few slides, yes. Maybe.
You can just present them and you can.
Sure. Okay. Thank you very much. I just wanted to say a few words from Work Package 1 before handing over to my colleagues from Bogota. Obviously, one of the main parts of Conexus has been the interaction between the different life labs. It was a great shame for all of us that we didn't start the project meeting together in Bogota, and instead we were sitting together in our rooms at home during COVID. And that was obviously a very difficult start to the project, and I'm sure we would all have much rather have been in Bogota. But the collaboration with Bogota has obviously been very strong despite not going there. And for us, within Work Package 1, we have the collaboration really sort of started for us with the development of the brand identity. Sorry? Thank you. I hope you can hear me, I'm sorry. The collaboration for us really started with the development of the visual identity for the project, which was something we developed with all of the partners in the project, but particularly in collaboration with Grupo Verde Lally. And unfortunately, Marta can't be with us today, but I wanted to pay particular tribute to the collaboration that we've had with Lally, because it's been a really sort of positive collaboration through the graphics of the project, and some of the infographics and other creative things that have been developed by Grupo Verde have been really inspiring for us, and it's been a great learning experience for us to work with them. You'll see now towards the end of the project that there are lots of products emerging from Conexus now, and some of those we are producing within Work Package 1, but also other outputs coming from other projects, from other work packages as well. So I wanted to pay particular tribute to the work that TUM have been doing, the Technical University of Munich. You'll have seen in Torino some of the wonderful branded outputs they've been producing. And I just wanted to mention just recently with ICLEI's coordination, we're now developing a series of policy briefs. So I've got example copies here of the ones for Bogota and for Barcelona. So two of our collaborators. So please come and have a look with me or with Pri and Rocker. Give us a wave down there. The team from ICLEI to have a look at these and see them as they start to emerge. But you'll see that these branded outputs are now going to really start to have a real impact as they emerge from the product. project. But I just wanted to sort of, by way of context from Work Package 1, just to say a few things there. But really, this is all about Bogota, and I'd like to hear a bit more about Bogota. We have just a very few slides, and the first one gives us a bit of the context. So I'm sorry to just have that little jump in there, but we wanted to just get through those few slides, and now to hand over really to hear a bit more about the context, Isabel, of the Bogota Life Lab.
Yes, thank you, John. Which is this one? That one. Okay. Hello, I am Isabel Melo. I'm also working at the Humboldt Institute in Bogota, and I work with Diana in the Nature-Based Solution Center in the urban group. So we did this project, the Life Lab project, in both the north and the southern border in Bogota. The commonality of these two regions is that they are an urban transition, and the common thing that they have is the water, or that we have at the Life Lab was the water management. So, and ecologically, we had a wetland, an urban wetland in the north, and a high Andean forest in the south. So we implemented 4 strategies. One is the living classroom, or aula viva. The other one was the restoration actions at a small scale. And then we had an experiment of ecological competition in the north, and infrastructure for education activities in the south. That's because then we will talk a little bit more about the project. So I will leave it there.
Sure.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You want to add something about the context? Yeah.
No.
Yeah, no, okay, so that I propose to talk a bit more about how do you engage with the diverse actors that you had, and tell us a bit more about your experience.
Okay, hi. From the beginning, we involve different types of actors. We start doing some webinars and discussion at the institutional level, trying to understand how they understand nature-based solution. We don't use a lot this term. So we start working with local government institutions, and at the same time we did some workshop with communities, trying to understand the local challenge. As Isabel said, we work with the urban sprawl challenge at the city level, but in the local scale, we identified another challenge. One of them was the capacity building in some issues. So we work with local communities to improve that capacities and do the restoration processes more, better. So we prioritize this aula viva, or living classroom, with the people, and also the topics we think to address. That's the main process we did, and it was very important to prioritize this topic for the people, and that allowed us also involve another kind of actors, like young people and schools. So that was also important. We start from the institutional level, more about the concept of nature-based solution, and then with the people, more about build capacities and improve skills in water management and restoration processes, and with the school and young people. Yeah.
Botánica para no botánicos. I think that every city should have such an action. So you work a lot with schools and also with education. Have you managed to introduce or to change curriculum in education in relation to NBS?
Yes, this comes to the next slide, please. Thank you. So actually, we had like three main actions in that direction, and I will say the first and foremost was to find teachers that had the spirit, that wanted to go beyond their tasks, right? Because, I don't know who have been a school teacher here, but they have a lot of work. So finding teachers that want to do a little bit more was like a good entrance, and with them we implemented many activities in both schools, and them were linked or integrated to the prize, which in Colombia is the School Environmental Project. It's an official project. Also, we try to do it like intra-curricular, because even though we talk about nature-based solutions, then also had to measure like the height of the trees, so it had to do with other subjects, not only the biological ones. So in the south, we made green fence. Then we also talk about water quality, because they have a local aqueduct, so that they manage in the community. And the monitoring activities, it was not like a monitoring like you expect to be like very rigorous, but it was a sort of a learning process for the children and the young people there. In the north, we had 3 implementations. Last year, we did an experiment with pollination, but then we found out that the plots were very small, and they tried to measure, and using iNaturalist, they tried to measure insects, and suddenly the insects were more in the other sides of the school, but anyway, it was a learning experience from them, and it not only involved students from like the environmental project, but also the social project, so it was a learning experience as well. And we had this year we are finishing, or in the middle of finish, the green fence and the pollinator garden in the north. So it's also have been a good experience. The second point was the rural, in the rural aqueduct, we equip them with signage and scripts for interpretation. And as a legacy of the project, I mean, we hope to have planted the seed, because the project will end. But then they have the infrastructure, as you see there in the top right picture, to explain the people and to make guided tours to how do they manage the aqueduct, how do they make the water because they have like three small villages or populations that needs this water. So they can integrate this with schools, but also other visitors. And last but not least, and I think my time is over, we also had an experiment with a student about ecological competition between native species and Kikuyo grass, which is a sort of a problem in the Bogota savanna and probably all of the Colombia ecosystems. So we hope that with this has a potential to advise technicians and also private land owners to combat the invasive species, which is the Kikuyo, with native plants. So it's a small scale, but we hope to have an impact. Yeah.
Thank you. And now we would like to sum up a bit what are the lessons that you've learned during all your experience and share with us.
I would like to add that we start thinking more about interinstitutional process with the mayors and environmental secretary, but we realize that the education processes are very important, and also because in that institution the teams change a lot, so for us it was difficult to have a constant process, and even for the monitoring and that. And when we realized schools were an opportunity to monitoring and improve capacities and engage different actors. So I think educational processes, the lesson learned is environmental education is an opportunity, and as Isabel said, sometimes teacher has a lot of things to do, and they need some support for institution, and I think we didn't think at the beginning the schools were one of our main actors to involve, but then they become in the main actor.
Thank you. Jonathan, would you like to add something?
Yeah, I'd love to. I mean, from our perspective, the thing I think we've learned most from collaborating with our Latin American colleagues in communicating nature-based solutions is the way that nature is seen as an intrinsic part of people. I think, you know, often the European view is quite separate of nature and people. I mean, that's not how I feel personally, but I think the completely natural way that relationship between human and nature is expressed by our Latin colleagues has certainly changed the way that we will design going forward, and we're very grateful for that.
Thank you very much. Great. Thank you very much. Now, after learning so many stories about how to engage with NBS, I would like to invite our next speakers and the city of Santiago. And we'll have here with us Jaime Hernández Garcia, professor at Pontificia Universidad Javeriana from Bogotá, and Isabel Brain, Head of Planning Department from Santiago Regional Government. Welcome. I would like to ask you also to introduce a bit both from the work package point of view and from the Santiago Life Lab point of view, and let us know how was your experience.
Hola, buenos días, good morning everyone. Glad to be here, to see so many familiar faces and some new ones. So I'm always glad to participate. Just a brief introduction about Work Package 2, which the aim was to build a shared understanding of NBS, both from the EU and LA, Latin American society, and from top-down and bottom-up approaches. And in that sense, give support to the project.
Yeah, hello everyone. Well, I'll be speaking from the regional government of Santiago perspective, and our role and our objective was to basically promote a nature-based vision of the city and the region, and to raise awareness and learning process about the challenges that we faced due to climate change crisis in the region, which is basically droughts and heat waves and the loss of biodiversity, and to make that challenge a common challenge for the all residents in the city and region. And I would say that one thing that stands out from our Life Lab in Santiago regarding our goal is that that makes it perhaps special is that we managed to engage several actors from the private and public sector that were somehow engaged and mobilized through this pilot, and Life Lab. So I would say that that's the.
So yes, what about governance? How you managed to integrate the nature-based solutions concept into governance and planning?
Okay, yes, from the work developed in Work Package 2, particularly linked to Task 2.2 with Fabio, and Cesar, Beatriz and Livia, that I think they are here in the room. We found out that, of course, there are differences between EU and LAC cities in terms of the way that they are integrating and responding to challenges of integrating NBS into policies. Roughly speaking, EU cities, as they have had more time in terms of thinking and implementing these policies, they are more in the challenge of integrating them in the different systems. In terms of Latin American cities, we found out that the NBS is gaining momentum, and there's a lot of narrative from the political point of view, but also from the civil society. But still, there's a lot of a long way to go in terms of actually implementing in the policies and in integration. And this picture, this slide is about a paper that we prepare in the task 2.2 based on the report that mainly propose adaptive governance as a way to do it.
Oh, okay. So I'll share with you our experience from the regional government about the governance, how to, govern this challenge and this new tool that is called NBS, right? So first, to start, what we did, and we work very closely with the Universidad de Chile. Alexis and partners are here. They actually were the ones that invited the regional government to be part of this pilot, this project, this Conexus. And what they did is what is in the middle of the picture here, which is this green infrastructure plan. So they led the process. We were accompanying them, but they were the ones that managed, because of their capacity as an academic institution, to convene and engage several actors, which as a government, a regional government, are more, rigid in that sense. So I would like to highlight in terms of the governance of this, project, the value of this partnership with institutions that contribute from different entry points. So the Universidad de Chile managed to work with the regional government, but also with other 36 institutions, private and public, in order to build this and design this beautiful plan. But a second reflection that I would like to share with you is that from the regional, and relates with what Tom was saying about these political cycles and election cycles, the regional government has a governor that is elected every 4 years. So every 4 years, it needs, if she or he wants to be re-elected, needs to give account of what they have accomplished, right? So this plan is beautiful because it managed to somehow host and collect all the intentions and willingness from different institutions. It's quite flexible. But then, from the regional government, we had to, take it and commit to implement it. And that's a challenge because once you commit to implement a plan, then you are accountable in the next election how many of the projects in the plan did you accomplish, right? So that's why I think my reflection here in terms of governance is how to negotiate the relevance of, this sort of compromising without giving up, in terms of making plans realistic, in terms of defining timelines and projects and so what can we accomplish the first year, the second year, the third year, and so on. So in order to move forward and scale up solutions as well. I was very motivated by the talk at the beginning where, the regional scale, which is our scale, it's very interesting in terms of the capacity to impact at the scale that is needed, right? So,
Yeah, thank you. That's why I wanted to ask you if there is a key concept that you work with when trying to integrate nature-based solution into policy and planning. So I suppose you all have a key concept as the core of your work.
Well, this is an interesting question, and to some extent, in my opinion, and from the work developing in Work Package 2, particularly Task 2.3 with Giovanna, Asa, and Thomas, that I cannot see them, but I know that they are here. Hello. And as Tom has highlighted at his presentation, a key issue was nature-based thinking. You know, trying to really give meaning to this and try from the different perspectives of the different cities, try to understand and make it into practice to some extent. We have found, or they have found in Task 2.3, it's about the rethinking and improve the human-nature relationship. As to some extent the word is, it reads as such, is to go beyond solutionism, which is at the end of the day that can bring some sustainability to these actions. Work with people for transformative change, as has already said. And key topics are governance, relation with nature, and long life perspectives.
Yes.
Well, yeah, and a reflection from the ground here. In Santiago, we have these two, I would say, two kind of levels of how we promote this nature-based thinking. The regional government is actually trying to shape the identity of all Santiago's residents as an identity that is shaped by the geography and the nature that surround us, and how we can, relate and feel that we are embedded in this, very close relationship between nature and, human beings there. And on the other side, I would like to share with you, and it's a beautiful, anecdote about the impact of Conexus. One of my colleagues went to the Torino workshop. He learned a lot, and then he accompanied the governor in Santiago to a new regenerated park, and he found out that it was all about cement. It was in the middle of the summer, and so he went and texted the governor saying, we should stop doing this. We are building heat islands, basically, in our parks, and nature-based solutions are the way, and da-da-da. So then the governor forwarded me the WhatsApp messages saying, Isabel, we need to organize a task force in order to, and the mandate is the one written there, that the governor said we should, every project that the regional government fund at the local or regional level should go with the SBN criteria. We will not fund any other infrastructure, open space that doesn't have this, that doesn't meet the SBN criteria. So we are working hard in writing up also an SBN design guide. So everyone that applies to regional funding has to meet this. So I think that through this, we are embedding it, making part of the DNA of the regional government, this SBN criteria, which is good news, I think, I hope.
Yeah, just now, before concluding, I would like to ask you why sustainability plans are so important to you, because in our small, quick discussion yesterday, you mentioned that sustainability is the key here. So what's sustainability for you?
Yeah, thank you, Karina. Again, this topic it's been work in Work Package 2, also with the colleagues of Task 2.3 that they are working with the 7 Conexus cities. It's actually an ongoing task. And the question is, what's next after Conexus, which is, of course, very important. There are just two ideas I would like to mention that they are working, among others, is one particular idea is give value of the NBS interventions in both in the civil society and in the authorities. In the civil society, in communities, by integrating to local knowledges and to local daily lives, and also a part of social learning. And in the authorities, as we have commented before, in terms of governance and policies.
Yeah, okay, and one quick reflection about sustainability. This is not a very nice picture, very sad indeed, because we planted there a Miyawaki forest. We went with Amne, my colleague here, and 6 months ago the height of the trees were this, and now they are higher than me standing with my hand above. Yeah, it's working. We had a great partner that helped us in the, planting and all that. But what we found key about, and we feel very confident about the, this Miyawaki being, becoming an old forest, is the community surrounding it. Who work as we call the guardians. The community surrounding the Miyawaki are the guardians. So one thing is that to have the funding, to have the political will to do it, to have the right, NGO or people planting, helping to, knowing the technicality, but then the guardians of the future of the Miyawaki are the community engaged and living nearby. So yeah, I would say that's key.
No, thank you. So if you can sum up very quickly some of the conclusions, please.
Yes, thank you. Very quickly, three points from my side. First, working with different actors is crucial. Not just government, not just scholars, not just community, of course, but a mix of the different actors involved. Second, incorporating local knowledges and perspectives. I think this is also crucial because NBS, to some extent, when it came to Latin America, it came as a foreign concept. And third, particularly talking from Bogotá and from an LA city, is that in the four Conexus Latin American cities, we share problems but also expectations regarding NBS. And I firmly believe that there is a good chance of NBS to help and to contribute to our cities and our livelihoods.
Yeah, and two reflections on my side that are not written there, actually, are different. It's the value of this, triangle between research, policy, and practice. For us, from an, regional government, engaging with the concept of SBN was only possible through this type of engagement with Conexus, with our relationship with an academic institution as University of Chile, that they kind of help us to look at new ways. And that relationship and engagement is really valuable and should continue. And also what I take from all this is also the importance of scaling up and accelerating as we move forward. That's it.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Now, our next speakers have also great depth of experience in the field of restoring urban ecosystems and demonstrating place-based MBS. I would like to invite now Giovanna Mercado and Paula Nicolau from, she's not here, right? She's not here. Yes, she's here. Hi, welcome. Giovanna Mercado is a researcher at SLU, and she also coordinates Work Package 3. And Paula Nicolau is an architect at Câmara Municipal de Lisboa, and she's coordinating Lisbon Life Lab. So please, I would like to ask first both of you, what do you think there are the benefits of nature-based solutions from the Life Lab perspective?
Yes, thank you so much. Hello, everyone. We're here to talk about the Life Labs. This has been a central part of Conexus, and we're so happy, and in my experience, I'm so happy to have been able to actually witness the work of the Life Labs and coordinate with the Life Labs and go together in this adventure of testing NBS locally. I think the benefits are many, but I will talk from two different sides, from my reflection, and also from the integration of citizens in the local government planning and testing of NBS. So I think from my perspective and from my experience in Conexus, I think we had the Life Labs at the time that was very hard for us, for the world, for everybody, which was the COVID times. That's when we started the project. So having the project starting in such a terrible moment for humanity has also shown some benefits of this kind of collaborative work. It was a very good experience for us to have these platforms and to have many actors engaged, even though we were not able to go out or we were not able to actually visit the areas or share together. We managed to continue with the work, to organize the Life Labs, to establish the Life Labs, to analyze problems together. Everything was done online, but it was an inspiring moment for all of us. And as Tom mentioned before, it was also something that helped us value more the role of nature in our cities. So that's from my perspective, but also from the Life Lab platform itself. I think it's very valuable because it kind of gets citizens and governments and NGOs and other organizations closer, but in a very intimate relation, so to say, where citizens really learn how to communicate with government. Government officers take the place of the citizens. They talk about the different structures that they have, administrative problems, structures, and how to overcome this. So a lot of learning, a lot of opportunities, I think. And Paula.
Yeah, thank you.
Hello. We think NBS benefits go beyond biodiversity benefits because NBS, at least in Lisbon, connected people, communities with the local power, with the local decisions. We have, it's good for the mental health, NBS, and the Life Lab experience. We've noticed that it's very good for the citizens' mental health, for connecting with each other, and people started to understand the nature, the cycles of the nature, and also the importance of NBS to the climate, to adapt to the climate changes, and this is very important. And for us, it was in the Life Labs. The most important thing was the engagement and bringing new people to this not fight, to this change, and to understanding the importance of changing the mindset and of taking care of the city.
Thank you. And we always speak about the benefits and successful stories. And as Giovanna mentioned, we also had some challenges along our journey. What are the challenges, a part of COVID, from your perspective, Paula?
Well, we have a lot of challenges. I have a list of challenges here because I don't want to forget. Well, in Portugal, we have two different levels of local power decision. We have the municipality and the parishes. And we can have in the same place two different political parties. That's the first, and they both decide about the urban planning, not planning, but the urban conservation. This is the first challenge, and they both want to correspond to the citizens' expectations. That's the second big challenge. Having NBS, having nature, more nature in the city, and correspond to the citizens' expectations without having them saying they don't want nature because they need cars. The second challenge are the administration procedures. We have a lot of bureaucracy, and everything takes a lot of time to do, and it's hard it's difficult. I said this during all our meetings. It is difficult sometimes to spend money because everything takes too much time. And working in silos, it's another thing. That's why we have been talking all these years about governance, but we still work in silos. I think not only in Lisbon, but in many more cities. And this makes decision-making harder. Co-design, third, co-design with population. Well, during decades, the local power wasn't used to decide with the population. They decided alone. And now the population, from one side, we have a population that wants to participate. And for the other side, we have also a population that doesn't believe in the participating. They think, I'm going to spend my time there participating, but the decision is already made, so things aren't going to change. So co-design with population, and also here we have the expectation. So it's not very easy, but I think in these 4 years, we've made a long way, and we are really sad because it's going to end now that we have more citizens wanting to engage in nature-based solutions. And for us, this is also very important. Well, more challenges. We have the first challenge. We need to change the mind of the policy makers and the mind of the political decisions. And we cannot do that in 1, 2, 3 years. But when they see, someone said here, the governor went to a place and he decided they couldn't do more heat islands, and that's the same. We need time for the political decisions to understand the importance of nature-based thinking, not about nature-based solutions, but also nature-based thinking, nature-based planning, nature-based whatever, but more nature. We also need to change the mindset of, you don't need to change, but we need citizens to understand the importance of nature, but for that we have to give them better infrastructures, for instance, better public transportation. If we have better public transportation, we can leave the cars at home, so we have, or we cannot have cars. We can leave the cars and we can have more green spaces. People want more green spaces, but they also want to have spaces to park the cars, and we need to find a way to get rid of the cars. I think challenges, that's it.
Thank you. So the car is an issue, isn't it? So I would like also to ask both of you, how do you foresee the future of and sustainability of NBS? And also, if we will have a bit of a time, I would like to ask you more about the co-design. How do you see the future of co-design? Is it possible to talk about co-design and participation or not?
Thank you. Yeah. Yes, about the future and sustainability of NBS, I think more citizen participation would be a key part of sustainability of NBS. I think NBS was the first, came from a more academic kind of reflection, but once we tried to implement NBS, we realized, oh, there are citizens there in the cities. So I think the future sustainability will have to develop new ways of integrating citizens, building a common language for the citizens and the local governments, as well as the academia, to be able to integrate all these processes that we want to establish in the cities. We want to go back to nature. We want more nature in our cities, and that is not possible if we don't take into account the human factor there. So I think that's one of the more important aspects, but also thinking about NBS will require also thinking about in more structural terms, like what Paula was saying. You cannot ask the citizens, okay, don't have cars. You need to provide other solutions at the same time that we want to reduce cars, so to say. So we will need to also think about a lot about environmental justice, for example, and this should be like a crucial aspect of NBS in the future, and also, as you can see, biodiversity concerns as well. So I think NBS is going to evolve to include these two aspects, environmental justice and biodiversity enhancement and conservation more broadly, but also with a high emphasis in citizen participation and citizen ownership of these nature-based solutions, not only participation in decision-making, but also in long-term maintenance and being part of nature itself. So, yeah, I think that's hopefully the way. Yeah.
Thank you. Would you like to add something, Paula?
Giovanna said a lot of we have been talking about between the two of us. In Lisbon, we have a lot of people eager to participate in the decisions and also in taking care of the city, taking care of green spaces and taking care of the streets. And they need and they want to feel the city belongs to them. But at least at Lisbon, we don't have an easy way for people to take care of the public spaces, and we need to make that shift. We need to find a way, and I see a very green future for the cities, and I see a very green future for Lisbon. We have the technical understanding, we have the citizens wanting to participate. We just need to do this change in the way we work, and for one side, accept people taking care in making decisions about the urban space and not only the municipality. And we need to change. Also, we as public employees, public technicians, and the populations, we need to find a way to find a bridge between these two needs and wantings, because we really have a new citizenship, people who want to participate and to co-design and be responsible.
That was great. Thank you very much. So let's don't forget about biodiversity, co-design, and bridging with people. Thank you very much. Now, thank you. Now I would like to invite our next speakers, coordinators of Work Package 4 and Torino City Lab. So we will listen to the story of Martina van Lierop, a researcher from Technische Universität München, and Riccardo Saraco from Torino, responsible of Torino City Lab. Welcome. I'm very glad to have you here today. Now I would like to introduce the work package and ask Martina could you please give us a brief explanation of this title, which seems really complicated, analyzing, synthesizing, and guiding. So please.
Okay, well, thank you for asking. So yeah, to keep it brief, what we did is we supported the practitioners in the Conexus live labs by analyzing the MBS, their implementation, as well as the supporting governance processes. And we did that also by synthesizing knowledge on nature-based solutions, and of course guiding the practitioners and hopefully also in the live labs and beyond in MBS implementation. And we mainly focused on indicator-based monitoring and assessment as a kind of a key to shared learning. And we looked into governance in a way to ensure more locally relevant uptake of MBS. To keep it brief.
And Riccardo, I would like to ask you to give us some brief description of the pilot activities in Torino.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to underline some key elements of our Life Lab in Valdocco and the pilot initiative. The Conexus Valdocco Vivibile pilot in Torino allowed us to experiment and test some innovative activities to reach some specific goal. The first one is to implement an integrated and multifunctional regeneration plan to improve the quality of life, starting from the environmental quality, by using nature and nature-based solution in combination with other kind of intervention, like, for example, urban drainage system and viability change in order to reduce the velocity of the cars and provide safer pedestrian crossing. But by implementing MBS, we also want to mitigate some risk associated with climate change, and specifically heat island and flooding. Given this, Valdocco Vivibile makes a widespread micro-intervention. This is the right, yeah, micro-intervention in a neighborhood named Valdocco in the entire district on public space. In addition, we also want to build a community around the MBS and about the role of the nature in mitigating the negative effects of climate change. This community of stakeholders supported the pilot by informing, promoting an exchange, and debating about the project itself, but also the strategies and approaches accompanying this initiative.
Thank you. And Martina, you mentioned before the indicators, assessment and monitoring. So as we all love indicators, could you give us more explanation about your work on this, please?
Yeah, sure. So we did also interviews with practitioners, and what that showed is that in general, more indicators and indicator frameworks might not be needed. What is more needed is more support in implementing monitoring and assessment in a more participatory and inclusive way, also within its larger governance context. So in order to do that, we developed an action framework for participatory monitoring and assessment in 5 steps, starting with formulating objectives together, then forming a credible indicator portfolio, so you can use existing indicator frameworks for that, and then ensuring that those indicators are aligned to the formulated objectives, They should be relevant, of course, to the local context and the desired measurement of the spatial scale. They should be relevant and suitable for the given time frame of the project, or in a way when you want to do this assessment. And they need to be feasible. You need to have the available skills and, of course, resources. Then to ensure that legitimacy, it is also good to check again the indicator selection with a larger group of stakeholders and discuss again the purpose of the indicators, their saliency, as well as the feasibility. And finally, what you can do is add politicized indicators for the selection. So what do we mean with that? What we see is that it would be good to have in the final selection 1 or 2 indicators that are relevant for each of the actor groups. For example, health benefits issues and indicators for that for the inhabitants. Or you can include in the final selection some indicators that are more related to underrepresented issues, such as environmental justice. And this kind of approach we tried also to apply in the Conexus Live Labs and to see how that works.
Thank you. And talking about Live Labs, how was this process in Torino?
Yes, monitoring activities are indeed also a matter of skills and resources, and yet monitoring and assessment activities are very relevant because they give evidence also about the public spending. And when we start the process managed by Martina and her colleagues, we soon realized that it was not easy to obtain the data from the proposed list of indicators, and also we don't have internally the skills to measure them. Fortunately, the city had a previous experience with an external agency in using the ecosystem services analysis to monitor and assess the benefit of MBS. This methodology holds some potentials. It allows to measure, to use the available data and outputs to make to measure the benefits in a pre-post comparison. It allows also to measure the social benefit of MBS by also engaging citizens in this kind of activity. And it's possible to valorize, to give an economic value of the benefits produced by the nature in urban context. For this reason, we outsourced this activity at the same company that I was already working with the city, and they start conducting the monitoring activity by implementing a monitoring campaign each 6 months starting from end of 2022. This monitoring activity is still ongoing. We are waiting for the third and the final report. But this activity already gave us promising numbers. We are recording improvement of carbon sequestration, pollutant removal, stormwater infiltration capacity, decrease of the temperature. So our next step will be to show these results to our technical colleagues from the Green and Environment Department, and to our policy decision makers, in order to give them the evidence, also in terms of criticisms, for future planning, for future urban planning.
Thank you. And Martina, can you explain us how can you monitor this approach in Conexus Live Labs, please?
So the way we did it, we developed learning logs, and those are what we call them iterative self-assessment surveys. Iterative in this means we conducted them every 6 months. We also did training workshops on monitoring assessment or specific indicators, and we also had feedback reports to show, okay, what do we see actually every 6 months? So this iterative process of every 6 months, that allowed us to track the progress and the process in a way of MBS implementation, as well as the indicator-based monitoring and assessment. And that allowed us, again, to see, okay, which difficulties are there, which opportunities are there, and to adjust the processes accordingly. And of course, the whole process helped to build capacity. We saw where the difficulties are, and also there we could adjust the workshops to give the information that was needed. So some of the things that we learned is it is important to define the purpose of the indicators from the start. It is important to identify the scale of the indicator, both on a spatial and temporal level, which is often not done. Ensure that the selection of indicators covers different MBS benefits. So if we're looking at ecosystem services, you want to have provision services, regulating services, habitat, and cultural services. Consider the available knowledge, and that doesn't need to be only in the municipality, that can also be the academia involved or NGOs that are involved. So also look there, what kind of expertise is there. And finally, to ensure project planning and research management, to have this, well, make sure that your process is long-term and short, concerning personnel, time, and of course budget.
And I wonder if you also have looked into governance when relating this to monitoring and assessment.
Yeah, we did. So I mentioned before that in general we said, okay, we don't need more indicators. However, there's always a however. So we did find a gap in indicators in assessing governance processes. So based on a literature review, we developed 12 governance indicators, indicated here also on the slides. And based on these indicators, we developed a survey, and luckily 100 city experts, and I hope also some of you, filled that in, mainly experts from Latin America and from Europe, to assess in a way their city on a Likert scale. So 1 was, okay, this aspect is not addressed at all, until 5, okay, we addressed this actually pretty well in our city. So for instance, we asked, do public institutions and other relevant decision makers support or engage in monitoring and assessment of nature-based solutions in your city? So as a result, we know that MBS and related concepts like green infrastructure are accepted and taken up in the majority of the cities, at least to a moderate to strong level. However, there's another however, all other governance indicators scored actually rather low, so below the average in the way of 3, with the lowest scores on community-based knowledge, followed by integrated working and monitoring and assessment. We also saw differences between, of course, European cities and Latin American cities, where regulations and policies were better addressed, together also with strategic and incremental planning and knowledge development and sharing. But also within the Latin American countries that participated, we saw differences, and sorry to say to all the Brazilian participants, they scored actually the worst from all cities. So we see some work out there. And in addition to the survey, we also did some interviews to see how practitioners in the live labs use, well, monitoring assessment and how that works in practice, particularly in a wider governance context, but also how monitoring assessment might support other governance processes, such as integrated working. Now, I know I don't have a lot of time, so everyone that wants to hear more about that, you can join tomorrow at 10:30. I will present more on that in the governance session.
Thank you. I would like to switch to Torino Life Lab again and ask Ricardo, what was the most innovative part, in your opinion, related to Torino Lab?
Yes, of course. You know, by the time the Conexus proposal was approved, the implementation of the pilot was already started thanks to internal resources. So we decided to use some of the resources of Conexus to make activities regarding participation and governance. Because the city was the only local partner, we decided to engage Torino Urban Lab as a partner of Conexus. Torino Urban Lab is an autonomous agency devoted to explain to citizens the past, ongoing urban transformation, and also the future development of the city. They help us in this activity, and they operatively manage this activity. Within our Life Lab, we aim to co-design with stakeholders an information and awareness raising campaign about Valdocco Vivibile pilot, the benefit it brings, and in particular, as I said before, about the climate change fighting or combating climate change issue. So we mapped the stakeholders in the area, and we invited them for our first participatory workshop to start the process. And together, we all agree on focusing our activities on new generation, and we soon identified the schools as a possible target of our initiative. This is also because there are many schools in the neighborhood, from kindergarten to professional to secondary schools, both public and religious one. Moreover, some of the pilot interventions are improving the school entrance by enlarging the sidewalks, limiting the speed of the vehicles in the school area, installing benches and small green solutions, and transform the public space into a safer and enjoyable place to socialize also during the start and the end of the school year, the school day. The building of this community helped us not only to inform and engage citizens and stakeholders, but also to start a dialogue with the administration that finally produced a sort of co-design by co-design of small portion of the pilot in the pilot implementation in the schools, near the schools that were engaged in the city, in the project.
It's very nice to hear that you work with schools. So we have it in the first part of the session, and we also have it now, and maybe we will have it later. It's very nice to hear it. And I would like just to briefly ask Martina to tell us a bit more about the guidance, because you have such a complex work package, and you also mentioned the guidance.
Yeah, looking actually at everything that we actually did a lot. So, yeah, besides all the things that we already developed and I already mentioned, we also looked into what are the needs of built environment professionals for guidance on MBS. So what we saw is that most frequently requested are, well, simply explanations on the MBS concept, what is it, but also the related challenges, such as climate change, and supporting co-governance and implementation approaches. In addition, we built a repository of more than 300 guidance materials, which are handbooks and manuals. And 14% of those have a focus on Latin American countries. About a quarter of them are either in Spanish and or Portuguese. And we also analyzed these materials. So we looked into how well do they address the MBS needs, how well do they address collaboration and participation, and we looked, of course, again, in monitoring and assessment. And I do have to shout out to my colleague Camila Flores for this analysis. She looked into that, and about 13% of the materials is addressing monitoring assessment. And we see some aspects of monitoring assessment are quite well addressed, such as indicator selection, but also monitoring methods. But other things are actually barely addressed in the guidance materials that we looked into, such things like monitoring frequency, data accessibility, and financial resources are barely addressed. And then finally, we also disseminated Conexus findings, hopefully to a wider audience. So we developed fact sheets and the accompanying infographics, which you saw actually in the slides. And we developed fact sheets for instance, the Nature Future workshops, as well as nature-based thinking. And we also developed fact sheets for the pilot projects, which we also provide in the local languages.
Thank you. Now, just a very few words, please. Ricardo, what's the benefits of this fact sheet? And then we will end our session.
I will briefly. Well, the fact sheet is a very useful tool in order to communicate, briefly but clearly the activity and the results of our activity. I think as a public officer, we need to improve our effort to communicate effectively what the city is doing. So it's very important. The fact sheet provides some informal, some practical information that helps us when we are designing and implementing NBS. Together with the other tools, we have, and thanks to Conexus, we have a set of tools that help us in terms of knowledge and guidance also. There are still hurdles to overcome. Of course, we need to have a long-term monitoring, and also we need to find innovative way to ensure maintenance of this new fragile MBS just implemented. And as I said before, the community involvement is, of course, an opportunity to help us in maintenance and manage also as a way to empowering citizens.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I hope our stories... Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Corinna, thank you so much. It's a really, really wonderful session. So great to hear from 4 of the cities and 4 of the work packages. So we'll take a break. If we can come back, and if you can be back in your seats by midday, so on the hour, please. And then we'll hear from the final 3 work packages and cities. So yeah, if we can be brief and straight back after coffee, so midday. Thank you very much. Cheers. Very, very quick announcement from Mark. Sorry, very quick.
Yeah. You have outside this, there is a marmalade, orange marmalade. It's from the trees of the city that are in the streets. Thanks to Miriam and to the team of Parques Jardins. There's also a book and some stuff from the Conexus. So please grab one. Thank you. Thank you.
City, Daniela couldn't come. Now she has a huge task.
I heard with this lag.
Yeah. I asked her, are we going to meet? She said, no, that.
I cannot do it when Conexus is just finishing.
Mm-hmm.
You know this job, this expert job of the EU LAC dialogue?
Mm-hmm.
So this process that Fleur mentioned.
Mm.
Just to let you know, that wasn't lunch, that was just starters. We're going to feed you up, ready for the walk and for your day in the city. Okay, so my job's really now just to introduce Denise Duarte from Universidad Sao Paulo in the Faculty of Architecture and Urbanism. Denise is going to be facilitating our next session for Work Package 5, 6 and 7, together with the 3 remaining cities. You'll hear all about it. And I think Denise is struggling a little bit with the voice, so you have our full support to get through the next hour or 3/4 of an hour. So thank you very much, Denise.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thanks, Tom. Thanks a lot. I'm trying to save my voice for this moment, the last 2 days. We are going to continue with another 3 sessions of invited speakers. And the first one's values, valorization, and investments in NBS with the Buenos Aires and San Martín Life Lab. So our speakers will be Mariana Justi, Consejo Nacional de Investigaciones Científicas, CONICET, y Aníbal. No, Aníbal didn't came, sorry. And Demiana Hotbat from the Municipalidad de General San Martín, Municipality of San Martín. Okay, that's right? Gracias. So this is linked to the work package 5, okay? Perfect. To continue our sequence. And I would like to introduce with the first question in English and in Spanish, because they are going to speak in Spanish and we have the translation. What do you think is the main contribution of Conexus on the NBS valuation debate? ¿Cuál creen que es la principal contribución del Conexus en el debate sobre valorización de SBN? The floor is yours.
Gracias, Denise. Bueno, vamos a inaugurar la hermosa diversidad de lenguajes que tiene Conexus hablando en español. No sé si se puede pasar la primera... La que viene.
Me da miedo apretar el rojo.
Perfecto.
Bueno, antes de contestar tu pregunta, Denise, voy a introducir un poco cuál es el objetivo del Work Package 5 que estoy representando, pero que está compuesto por muchos integrantes, algunos presentes y algunos que no. El Work Package 5 tiene que ver con la valorización y la inversión en soluciones basadas en la naturaleza. Fundamentalmente, dentro de los objetivos estaba estudiar cuáles eran los métodos de valorización que existían en soluciones basadas en la naturaleza para poder establecer cuáles eran sus costos y beneficios y de esa forma poder generar business cases o carpetas de proyectos, ¿no? El Work Package 5 está compuesta por 3 tareas, que son el TAS 5.1, 5.2 y 5.3. El primero, como mencionaba recién, tenía que ver justamente con poder identificar y evaluar cuáles eran esos métodos de valoración en soluciones basadas en la naturaleza. El 5.2 tenía más que ver con cómo aplicar algunas de esas metodologías y generar análisis de costo y beneficio en algunos de los pilotos de algunos Life Lab de Conexus. Específicamente se analizaron 3, que fueron los huertos urbanos de Barcelona, los jardines de lluvia en San Martín. Buenos Aires y algunas soluciones basadas en la naturaleza que se incorporaban en el proyecto de Valdocco Vivibile en Turín, Italia. Y finalmente, el 5.3 tenía que ver con cómo utilizar esos resultados de valoración, de esos análisis costo-beneficio para generar argumentos y generar un manual de presentación de esos casos de negocio, ¿no? Carpetas de proyecto para la implementación de soluciones basadas en la naturaleza. Y bueno, Demián, ¿vos vas a presentar un poco el caso de San Martín antes de responder? ¿O?
Podemos.
Ah, bueno, en Buenos Aires Live.
En realidad, sí, un poco en... Ahí va. San Martín, no es solo San Martín, es el Life Lab Buenos Aires o parte de. Somos el caso atípico donde, bueno, en una ciudad había 3 pilotos o 3 proyectos, ¿no?, dentro del laboratorio. Entonces, un poco esta imagen trata de dar cuenta de esos 3 pilotos. El primero son los cercos de fitorremediación del aire, que es parte del proyecto Respirar. Está Verónica Fabio por acá. Y el segundo es la recreación de un humedal en el entorno del lago Lugano, también en la ciudad de Buenos Aires, que es un piloto, ahí está Vero, que estuvo trabajando en la ciudad autónoma de Buenos Aires. El tercero son unos jardines de lluvia que se hicieron en el municipio de San Martín y, bueno, el piloto en el que yo estuve particularmente más involucrado. Ahí está. Y que, bueno, un poco estas imágenes dan cuenta de la intervención. Y aprovecho esto para ya directamente... perdón, las respuestas tenían un orden, ¿no? Sí, primero, segundo.
No, explicar el caso que está ahí.
No, la intervención es, bueno, es un jardín de lluvia en un ámbito de alta densidad urbana, en un barrio industrial, que entonces tiene un porcentaje de impermeabilización del suelo de casi el 100%. Entonces, bueno, poder incorporar suelo absorbente y poder, además, ¿no?, en un lugar donde casi no había vegetación urbana, generar o recrear, ¿no?, parte de un ecosistema casi perdido, bueno, fueron como los 2 principales valores de esta intervención. Y ahí se ve un poco la obra terminada. Y también se ve la impronta del barrio, ¿no? Digamos, grandes edificios, grandes fábricas que básicamente vuelcan todo el agua, ¿no?, cuando llueve sobre la red pluvial del barrio. Si querés.
Ahora sí, retomando la pregunta sobre la contribución principal de Conexus en el debate de la valorización de soluciones basadas en la naturaleza y representando al World Package 5, nosotros una de las conclusiones principales del 5.1, liderada por Tom, tenía que ver justamente cómo los gobiernos locales difícilmente utilizaban estos métodos de valoración por encontrarlos extremadamente complejos, con una gran, digamos, con la necesidad de generar una gran cantidad de datos, inclusive datos que finalmente no se utilizaban, y también por estar descontextualizados, ¿no?, por no estar amoldados a contextos sociales, económicos, culturales distintos y también sociopolíticamente diferentes, ¿no? Entonces, de alguna forma lo que hicimos con el TAS 5.2 fue adaptar estas metodologías a los casos que finalmente decidimos evaluar. Y bueno, eso fue una de las, digamos, principales aportes a este debate, ¿no? Cómo generar metodologías más ad hoc, ¿no?, más fáciles de llevar a cabo. Damián.
Sí, bueno, puntualmente respecto al municipio de San Martín, digamos, el proyecto Conexus empieza en un momento, al mismo tiempo que en el municipio se estaba discutiendo con un desarrollador urbano las condiciones de una intervención, de unos edificios que quería construir. Entonces, en esa negociación, la contraprestación tenía que ver con la puesta en valor de 2 calles de la ciudad, ¿no?, cercanas que es bueno, este barrio que recién les contaba, que es básicamente un barrio industrial. Entonces, en medio de esa negociación, bueno, aparece la invitación a participar como un actor más, ¿no? O como un socio dentro del proyecto Conexus, y eso nos dio el pie para modificar un poco el proyecto de esta intervención de puesta en valor del espacio público, incorporando soluciones basadas en la naturaleza en la obra, ¿no? Que de otra forma seguramente no hubiese sucedido. Así que en principio Conexus en San Martín fue, ¿no? la posibilidad de, con un argumento y con un capital semilla que se agregaba a lo que ya iba a aportar el desarrollador, incorporar soluciones basadas en la naturaleza, ¿no? en nuestro contexto. Y bueno, sobre eso también incorporar la idea de evaluación, ¿no? de este tipo de proyectos. Y bueno, después en todo caso lo seguimos viendo, pero cómo ampliar el argumento de este tipo de proyectos, ¿no? Viendo el tipo de beneficios que generan y co-beneficios que generan más allá del objetivo original, que era, bueno, transformar este barrio o mejorar el espacio público en un sector que básicamente, bueno, si bien es un barrio industrial, es una calle que conecta, ¿no? La Universidad de San Martín con gran parte del transporte público y con un barrio popular, ¿no? Una pequeña villa que está también dentro de este sector.
Gracias. Nos gustaría escuchar algo sobre el análisis costo-beneficio relacionada con el tarea 5.2 y cuál es la utilidad de realizar valoraciones económicas en intervenciones de SBN.
Bueno, para la tarea 5.2, poder generar este tipo de valoraciones es vital para poder justamente romper y que se transformen en soluciones adoptadas de forma generalizada, o sea, tener elementos contundentes, argumentos contundentes sobre cuáles son los beneficios, los costos y beneficios, ¿no? En un lenguaje que finalmente los tomadores de decisiones están necesitando, ¿no? ¿Qué costo y qué beneficio va a tener este tipo de intervenciones? Bueno, se convierte en algo vital para poder justamente salir, no me acuerdo, antes estábamos hablando de la escalabilidad de los proyectos, ¿no? De estar siempre en los pilotos y poder llevarlo esto como a que sean finalmente soluciones tradicionales, ¿no? Como que sea lo que tradicionalmente se hace. Y en el caso de la tarea 5.2 lo que hicimos fue, como les decía antes, trabajar con 3 casos que fueron seleccionados por una serie de variables que dentro de mañana seguramente si les interesa en la sesión de economía, Demián va a presentar estas evaluaciones. Lo que hicimos fue trabajar con los actores principales, ¿no? de los 3 pilotos de forma bastante cercana para poder adaptar y generar una metodología y poder hacer ese análisis costo-beneficio y detectar cuáles eran los beneficios, los co-beneficios y cuáles eran monetizables y cuáles no también, ¿no? No sé.
Sí. Bueno, en realidad seguramente no debería decirlo, pero en general en los proyectos de escala mediana y en contextos de gobiernos locales no se suelen hacer análisis de costo-beneficio, ¿no? Hay como cierta... O en todo caso los análisis de costo-beneficio son mucho más, digamos, están en el masomenómetro, ¿no? De los tomadores de decisiones, ¿no? Entonces, bueno, tener por detrás digamos, una obligación o digamos, una demanda por parte de un financiador, ¿no? Como la Comunidad Europea, de tener una racionalidad, ¿no? En la obra que se proponía y en la evaluación de la obra que se proponía, bueno, realmente fue un valor agregado importante, ¿no? Para poder bueno, empezar a darle más racionalidad al gasto público, a la inversión, y sobre todo en el caso de un proyecto de soluciones basadas en la naturaleza, donde, digamos, un proyecto tradicional tal vez es más fácil medir los costos y los beneficios que genera, es más lineal el proceso. En este caso, bueno, por lo que venía diciendo Mariana, ¿no? Porque muchos de los beneficios o de los co-beneficios son difíciles de medir en principio y más difíciles de valorizar, ¿no? Bueno, poder haberlo hecho fue muy interesante para demostrar ese valor que si no muchas veces queda oculto, ¿no? Dentro de los proyectos. Sobre todo pensando, bueno, en la comparación, ¿no? De esta obra de jardines de lluvia que se realizó y lo que hubiese sido la alternativa tradicional, que era seguramente reforzar la red pluvial del barrio, o no hacer nada, ¿no? Probablemente se hubiese hecho, si no, una obra de mejoramiento del espacio público sin tener en cuenta ni siquiera, bueno, qué hacer o cómo trabajar con el agua y con la preservación, ¿no? Del agua que llueve, que cae dentro de este barrio. Gracias, Conexus.
Y sobre los casos de negocio, ¿cuál es la relevancia de los business cases de la carpeta de proyectos para fomentar la inversión en SBN? Que es un punto muy sensible, difícil.
Sí, lo mismo que mencionaba antes, es un poco el poder tener esos argumentos para hacerlas mainstream, ¿no? Que se puedan llevar como si fuese una solución tradicional, no estar de vuelta, estar hablando ya de las soluciones basadas en la naturaleza como una cosa más tradicional, ¿no? Que se implementa siempre, ¿no? Que no hay que estar explicando. Entonces, de alguna forma, lo que generó el 5.3, que tenía que ver con generar estos business cases, fue justamente generar unas guías para poder bueno, hacer más, valorar más, tener argumentos, ¿no? A la hora de invertir en soluciones basadas en la naturaleza. Y dentro de esta tarea lo que se hizo fue dar continuidad al análisis de casos del 5.2, se tomaron los mismos casos para desarrollar esas guías, para implementar esa guía, ¿no? Para probar cómo esa guía funcionaba, y se tomaron también 2 casos externos, bueno, en realidad uno de Lisboa y uno de Lima, y se pusieron a prueba. Y también seguramente entre las sesiones de mañana se puedan ver algunos de esos resultados.
Sí, bueno, ahí hay un primer punto que es central, ¿no? Que es la posibilidad de pasar de una intervención piloto a una política pública. Es poder, bueno, instaurar o instalar una forma de trabajar y que se vuelva estándar o mainstream. Ahí sin dudas hay una gran utilidad de los business cases o de estas carpetas. Otra es la de conseguir financiamiento, claramente, ¿no? Entonces, una carpeta bien desarrollada que incluya, ¿no? un análisis de costo-beneficio, o por lo menos análisis de costo-beneficio hechos para intervenciones similares, que permita prever, ¿no? Lo que se puede obtener con lo que se está proponiendo, seguramente sea más atractivo frente a un financiador, ya sea internacional o ya sea nacional, ¿no? Cuando estamos los municipios discutiendo por presupuesto, ¿no? Tratando de conseguir presupuesto del gobierno nacional, ahora no, lamentablemente en Argentina, tal vez del gobierno provincial, tener un caso más sólido, bueno, siempre mejora o posiciona mejor frente a otros. Y también creo que sirve, bueno, estando en Barcelona, que fue o sigue siendo un modelo urbano para muchas ciudades, creo que también hay algo que tiene que ver con poner de moda, ¿no? Para bien, temas. Entonces, ¿no? Es algo que pasa mucho en las ciudades, ¿no? Esto de la ciudad al lado lo hizo, ¿no? Yo quiero lo mismo para mi ciudad. Entonces, bueno, poder contar los casos o poder mostrarlos, y ahí también es clave, creo, todo el trabajo en hacer documentos que son visualmente atractivos y simples y fáciles, ¿no? de aprender para un público más amplio. Bueno, creo que los business cases sirven también para contagiar, ¿no? En el buen sentido, las soluciones basadas en la naturaleza a otros colegas y otras ciudades vecinas.
Muchas gracias. Just in time. Gracias por compartir las experiencias. Now we are going to call our next speakers. Martin Grisel, Director of the European Urban Knowledge Network, please. And Marqui Montileu, which is at home, from the Barcelona regional team. Please, the floor is yours for your presentation.
Yeah, thank you, Denise. Yeah, nice to be here. Actually, in a way, it's a very easy job for me to talk about Work Package 6 because it refers back to all the other work packages.
Mm-hmm.
So let me start the presentation, which I have here.
Yeah.
Oh, I cannot see it. Okay, it's me. Yeah, this is the first one indeed, I see it. Yeah, so the Work Package 6 is sort of the clearinghouse of everything produced in Conexus. It has the objective to mobilize the collective capacities for co-creation and integration of NBS in urban policy and planning. This is taken from the description of work, obviously. Our role was to create a space and also the infrastructures to facilitate transnational learning. And this has been quite a challenge, to be honest, not only because of COVID, as we have heard earlier this morning, but also that we needed to agree on the concept of NBS, obviously, and there are differences in perception also, as has been mentioned earlier today, also between Latin American countries and European countries. But we also needed to cross, let's say, cultural differences, language barriers, big topic also, if you really want to learn from each other. And so that was an important part also of our work package. And then our role is also to prepare, to upskill and upgrade the knowledge that is provided by the different work packages, and to secure it for, let's say, for further use. In a way, to secure the legacy, but also the impact and the scalability of the knowledge that was produced by the other, let's say, working groups and researchers in the project. And then, of course, we also need to create concrete products. This is done along three main tasks that interact, and I will briefly, let's say, give you a review of how we dealt with those different tasks. It's about indeed capacity building, learning, and co-producing. So starting with capacity building, and it was our task 6.1, what we did first was to systemize the hubbing channels. This was a word that was completely new to me when we started the project, but it became, of course, quite concrete. It's about facilitating knowledge exchange on co-production, on data and indicators, and also to prepare knowledge for to be taken up by the work packages that we just had, the business investments. One of the things that we also did within Work Package 6 was to work very closely with Work Package 3 in what we call the Life Lab exchanges. And that was most useful, I mean, especially in the beginning of the project, where we really needed to facilitate and to create a space for learning. So we had bi-monthly meetings with the Life Lab, let's say, participants, the different cities, to really concretely learn from each other. And then an important, let's say, other activity within this work package, or this task more specifically, is the work that we did on the SDGs, to contribute, let's say, to showcase actually the built on evidence, the contribution or the importance of NBS in relation to Sustainable Development Goals and also the new urban agenda. And there is a poster presentation later by my colleague Federica Risi, who spent a lot of time in putting together that report. Now, if we look to the co-learning forums, I already mentioned in the beginning, of course, that it was quite complex. It was also partly due to COVID or to other restraints online, but also on site. Very useful. It absolutely adds value to the exchanges, of course. And this is all about cumulative learning in the transnational teams. And as you see in this short presentation, this sort of scale model, each of the co-learning forums that we organized, either online or in person, let's say, referred back to the other co-learning forums. So this was actually really part of an attempt to develop a collaborative methodology, to build upon knowledge created in the other co-learning forums, and to use also and to experiment, I must say, also with different forms of interactive learning and working together. It led to some concrete results, like a funding roadmap, but also, and that's a bit, let's say, the softer, to put it that way, output of our working together, an understanding, a mutual understanding also of the importance of language, the different languages. We really struggled also a bit in bridging the language gap, mostly, of course, between Spanish and English. Not everyone was bilingual in our teams or in the different teams, and we found different ways, which were not always funded in the research project itself, but working with language facilitators to bridge also these differences in language, but also to have a better understanding of the different cultures between Latin America and also European countries. We also paid quite a bit of attention to the importance of, let's say, EDI aspects, equality, diversity, and inclusiveness in our own projects. Now, if I go to the last task in our work package, it's about co-producing. We developed what we called an engine room. Sounds a bit mechanical, but it was actually quite really instrumental also to learning. It really helped us to exchange knowledge, to provide a space also to create feedback on work being carried out within the context of the projects, and to cross-fertilize it with the ecosystem of guidelines that was already presented earlier today. The conclusions are now in a report on harvesting workshops that is ready and will be available pretty soon. But it also led to a series of policy briefs and different handbooks. So a handbook on co-learning, and I just heard there's also a new handbook almost ready, I think, on decolonizing NBS education. As a spin-off of all these activities, we also were quite actively involved in the different NBS task forces. I will come back to those task forces a bit later, but I now would like to hand over to Mark.
Okay, well, thank you. Well, for us, it was really a challenge. First of all, because we wanted, from the City Hall perspective, we wanted to gather information from citizenship, so users in urban allotments, citizens and also entities. So we had to do a lot of interviews, more than 180 interviews, which is quite a lot of work. And also, sometimes the comprehension of the European project, or the language that we use in projects, when you downscale it at citizen level, it's tough. You have to think that most of the users of the urban allotments are elder people, so also there's a comprehension on the systems, language, methodologies. We interviewed a guy that was 92-year-old, but still active and going to work at the urban allotment once in a while, every week. So it was interesting. I'm really happy about the project because we joined the Conexus project, and if you look at the website at the City Hall of Barcelona, the Urban Observatory is already there, embedded in the website of the City Hall. When we started, the City Hall and us ourselves didn't have much knowledge of the information of what was. We knew obviously who was there working because they have a public contract, they don't pay almost anything just to be there. So it's more for a cohesion perspective that they work at the urban allotments more than for actually getting food. But we didn't have no information on what are the benefits, why you're going there, health, what you do there. Do you make friends over there? What are you planting? Do you know anything about biodiversity or that you are working and contributing to the biodiversity of the city? So that was
one of the main purposes, and I think it's the results are over there and they are on the website. So this is for us, it's for the team, not for me, but for the team. I think it's a good opportunity. The other thing, I mentioned it yesterday. We started during COVID, so when you have to start working with citizenships, doing workshops at the urban allotments, it was difficult during the first year, but we achieved to do it. Thanks also to the Parsi Jardin team, we also engaged the project with inside the 48 hours of urban agriculture that happens in the city. So we try to look for these synergies. It was very interesting to share results from the participants. They loved, after all the work of just going there and asking questions and doing the surveys, when we give them feedback, I think it was very comfortable from our perspective, but also for their perspective, because they understood, okay, what's the purpose of all of this? And the exchanges of knowledge, no? They started sharing seeds, sharing some recipes for treatments. So what we achieved with the project, it was, okay, normally they work at their urban allotment, but they don't get together in one place, and they share knowledge from different neighborhoods or different ways of working in the different urban allotments that the city has. So that was also nice to see how you could, through a European project, do this interaction. The other I mentioned at the end, one of the objectives was to have this website with a lot of information and a lot of data that the city didn't have. So I think it's very interesting. The other was we used also the project to help the city hall to establish like some methodologies with gathering data and with the naming of the urban allotments, classifying them, understanding them, mapping this information, having all the information in a GIS system, so also available for the public, for everybody. And I think there was some lack of information on gender also, which was when we did the surveys. Mainly the people who works at the urban allotments are men. So we have some homework to do from a city hall perspective. We have to change this and to focus with gender. It doesn't mean that women are not there. They are very present, but mainly who is in charge or who is planting or who goes every day to work, it's mainly men. But that's one negative point, I would say. And the other is, sharing this objective with city hall, other city hall areas, it was also very, very interesting. The impact is, I already mentioned it, all this information is available, it's public, it's on the website, the documents, the summaries, the website, the maps, the surveys, the results of the surveys are there. What challenges, for example, will be, okay, maintaining all this active. It will be the first challenge, searching for funding from the City Hall to keep maintaining these indicators. It doesn't have to be information every year, but maybe once every 4 years, renewing the data or getting new data to see the evolution, how this is functioning, how this is working. We've got also some contributions from other partners. For example, Sheffield came here to the city and did a nice work or very interesting work in biodiversity and finding nice results on the NBS and biodiversity linkage. I think this is going to be interesting to continue this work, and it can be helpful from a technician perspective to share with the politicians. Okay, what are the numbers? What are the figures? What are the findings about these solutions? I've already mentioned it. Maintaining data, it's tough. I mean, okay, that's a project, but if we only do it for the project, then what's going to happen? The purpose is that this is on the website of the City Hall, so it will have to be maintained. That's our main objective. And the other is the same. If political perspective changes or some technicians change, how we keep this flame alive and how we can continue with those works. And I pass again the floor to Martin. So we'll
it's a nice cooperation, as you see. Yeah, final slide, this one, I promise you. I'll be very short. Already mentioned the involvement in the task forces. I must say that was very interesting. We could use part of the budget, of course, of the project, but the difficulty is that when the project ends, I mean, we need to revise also our involvement in the task forces. We've been quite active, actually, well, from within Work Package 6. I know that others, Tom also was active in other task force groups. Well, we also contributed to the report that you showed, that you see here. This is something I would just like to flag, because it would be interesting to continue working, of course, in those task forces. We did quite a bit of work in the task force on governance. What we also did, there was also, I mean, outside the project itself, but it established a very interesting link also to the more policy context. And as some of you might know, the European Urban Knowledge Network is very much involved in policy making with member states and European Commission. But we have become really active in a so-called partnership within the, this framework called the Urban Agenda for the EU, which has a partnership, a so-called partnership, where member states, Commission, and cities work together on specific topics. And in this case, it is on the topic of greening cities. So there's a really good match between what this partnership is doing. It's interesting, Fleur, to hear you talking about the Green Deal, nature restoration law. Well, these are also topics that we are working on. And indeed, I mean, we could use some of our knowledge also collected through Conexus to see with member states, Commission, working very closely also with DG Environment on how to save the nature restoration law, perhaps not as the nature restoration law as such, but at least to see how to take elements from the nature restoration law and to make a case for greening cities, because this is also what this partnership is about. So this is quite political, but it is an interesting spin-off where we could really establish also a link between the work of Conexus and the more political work that we do. But it's also interesting to note that, I mean, already, I mean, also looking at my own experience, we are now involved in one EU-funded project through the Commission. It's a follow-up project of Go Green Routes, Go Green Next, and another project which is funded through the Driving Urban Transition framework, funded via JPI Urban Europe, and partly also DG Research, called Naturo. Other colleagues are also interested here. And that brings me actually to the really closing remarks of my presentation. So be sure that I only need 30 seconds. Yeah, the time span of this project is, I mean, it looks long, but it is actually really short. And it was even shorter, perhaps, I mean, the way we perceived it because of COVID. It really takes a lot of time to establish good relations. And it's so nice to see all the colleagues here from the different countries, but it also gives a bit of a bittersweet feeling because, well, in principle, this is the last time that we actually see each other at both sides of the ocean. And yeah, that brings me back. I mean, I was listening, of course, very closely also, Fleur, to what you said about plans within the European Commission, but it would really be nice if there would be something, some possibility of funding scheme to continue working or collaborating between Europe and the CELA countries. I think we really enjoyed it. It was been very enriching for everyone, from both, I can say, from my perspective, the European side, but indeed also from the Latin American side. And it would really be interesting to see if there will be future funding opportunities. And with this, I'll end. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Martin and Mark. To keep our schedule, I'm going to leave the questions for the Q&A session after the next one, okay?
Okay.
We stay or not?
No, please.
No, okay. I go.
I would like to ask the final speakers to talk about transdisciplinary urban NBS research and innovation programs with the São Paulo Life Lab. Please, Tom. Rodrigo Ravena, our Secretary of the Environment from the São Paulo municipality, and Giuliano Locoselli from the University of São Paulo. Please. I would like to invite you to introduce the topic, and then we go forward.
Sure. I'll just kick off and basically say that, yeah, obviously the job of Work Package 7, the project leadership and management, it involves a lot of scheduling and a lot of planning and financial management and rules and keeping to time and shouting get back to your chairs, but in very real terms, the gap that often is left in several projects I've been involved in the past is the kind of, actually the content leadership and the research leadership and genuinely pushing forward on this, working between the academic sector, the private sector, the public sector, particularly, that challenge integrating with cities at that level. So if it's okay, I think I'd probably, in terms of the questions, I think our question was around this kind of transdisciplinarity.
Transdisciplinarity, yeah.
So maybe we pose that to Juliana and Rodrigo from their perspective from Sao Paulo, and then I'll pick up a theme or two at the end, yeah?
It's hard to be the last one. I would love to speak in Portuguese, so we can all be able to talk in our own language. And so that's the difficult about this kind of job, but I think we did a very good job in these 4 years. And I think São Paulo learns a lot in creating this cooperation between public sector, the university, and the community. I'd like to say two things to be brief, and we are just in time to end. And I'd like to remark that São Paulo has a history of participation. The Secretary just exists because we have a Council of Environment. If we don't have the Council, we don't have the public office to take care of environment. And this kind of work and this kind of discussions, we are just talking about it, bring to this council the discussion about nature-based solutions. We now have one part of our city council on environmental talking about nature-based solutions. I will let you to do the whole, but we are going further with the relationships due to this experience with the academy. We are doing better and new plans and put together public perspective and private perspective of the development of the city, and you use to say that we learn listening, and this is a very good way of doing. The Conexus way of doing things is already integrated in the form that we do the policy in the city.
It was such a nice experience to have the São Paulo Life Lab and strengthening our collaborations between academia and the public sector in São Paulo. And I think from the beginning it was clear how biodiversity was very important for the city. I mean, in several terms, like we are in the transition between two mega diverse biomes. We have in the hand 3,000 tree species that we can put in the city, and that's amazing. So we have many tools available, but it's also very challenging. And I think it was clear for the academia and also for the public sector that we need to understand a little bit more to plan best the interventions in the city. And that's why we planned this Life Lab in the city. So I think we stepped a bit, we gave one step behind, and we tried to understand really what was the mechanisms that were driving the ecosystem services of this biodiversity and even the resilience of this biodiversity. I mean, we are seeing all these extreme events popping up all over the world. You probably heard in Brazil, this unprecedented flooding in the south, the dry period in the Amazon, dry rivers to the sand, and also now the heat waves in São Paulo. They are very uncommon. And we were very concerned because will these interventions in nature-based solution really deliver the existing service? They will serve their purpose during these extreme events or not? And that's something that drives us to make this collaboration and propose this Life Lab.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I'd like to pick up as well is obviously from Sao Paulo and from Brazil, it couldn't receive the funding from the European Union at the time of the project, and I think this is now changed, and it's to do with the relative global perspective of the GDP or
Newly
something
industrialized countries.
Exactly.
That list was terrible for us.
Yeah,
exactly. In this point of view, of course.
But then at the same time, we're very aware that Sao Paulo has this incredible model for funding collaborative research, right? A percentage of the city is contributed towards research and innovation.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you can say something about this deal, because I think it goes on to the next point as well.
And São Paulo, so it's 1% of all taxes of the state of São Paulo are direct to one funding agency, local funding agencies. So it's a lot of money, and they are very aware how important these collaborations are in the city. Yeah, or in the city.
So it gives some viability in the long term, but also puts a bit of pressure on the universities, the academic sector, in a way to fulfill that obligation of a public service, right?
Yeah.
I think it's very important. And yeah, say something.
I'd just like to say, we have all kinds of funds. São Paulo is a rich city considering the cities in Latin America, so we can find ways of fund and finance the action in environmental issues. I'd like just to say one thing that I didn't saw in the presentation. We just make public one area that equals 1.5 the size of Barcelona, that is still rainforests that exists in São Paulo. So that's a huge challenge to find how to pay for these areas, how to get money and pay to leave the forests alive to the future generations. But we have mechanisms, and I think the population is trying and learning how to participate in making decisions. Because it's not easy to be, for myself, to be the secretary and have to take the decision. Or yes or no, we are just joking. It's not yes or no. We have to think about what happened to the public, what happened to the city as a whole. So I think this kind of exchange and participation, and with the academy to check out if we are doing or we are putting together everyone. I think this is a very important way to do this.
And you mentioned in the past we had exchanges about also the dialogue between the social sciences and the natural and ecological sciences, and this has obviously been fairly fundamental. I just want to quickly reflect on one point and then maybe finish with Juliana. So, at the beginning I was saying that our attempt was to try to co-define the research questions and the methodologies between, this grouping of the third sector, the academic sector and cities. Of course, it's not so easy. It's not. But we all have different motivations. So, the municipality has to serve the citizens, it has to deal with the politics, implement the program, and so on. But from the academic perspective, we only have a certain toolkit available to us. We can stretch ourselves a little bit, but not so that we become like pancake people. So thin that we can't deliver. And there's in the discipline. Discipline is a good word as well as a bad word, right? That we have methodologies that are robust and embedded and come from a strength of the department. And then there's other challenges like, is there access to the knowledge? And I think it's great that the European Union really pushes for this open access publications, yeah? But I think we can go further, and obviously the challenges in the first 2 years, but also moving forwards for everybody is involving more the citizens and the businesses in that code definition and developing the methods together. So one of the examples that was mentioned before, that the Food and Agriculture Organisation is leading on the valorisation guide. You know, there the approach has genuinely been to try and work together with the cities to say, well, what do you need on developing a guide for valuing urban nature-based solutions, when we all know that the finance doesn't really exist there compared to other places, so it's a little bit challenging. But then, yeah, I think that's what we need to do if we're going to make progress on climate change and on biodiversity. And I think from a personal perspective, just maybe finish with Juliana and then on to questions. So maybe from a personal perspective, your own journey in this, how you found it, I think is an interesting reflection.
Yeah, so I may have two thoughts about that. So one is really, because of Conexus, I think we strengthened a lot our collaborations in the city. And that's amazing. And one thing that I learned is really that we have to be open and we have to create the means for a free transit of knowledge between all the different sectors. It's so funny because sometimes we spend so much time doing research, we use all the AI stuff, and then we come to the municipality and say, look what we found, and they say, oh, we already knew this. so it's very important to have this kind of transit. And I would say from my personal perspective, I told Tom, right? So Conexus really changed my life because of Conexus, all the things I got this grant that supported our Life Lab, and also because of this grant, I got this position at the university. So it was really a changing life experience.
Well, I think you probably had a big part to play in getting that grant and achieving that yourself, and the city has a good system, and you have an excellent group and team, and very well represented here. So, yeah, I think the danger with these sessions, it's easy to be too self-congratulatory with these projects, but I hope you've got a sense from this discussion of the range of activities and particularly the people involved in all of this work. And so, yeah, I think we can maybe just finish by thanking all of the cities and work packages for that, because it's been a really enjoyable journey. Yeah. Okay, so thank you to Brazil, and thank you to all of you. And thank you, Denise, for keeping going despite the voice problems and keeping us to time. Thank you. So,
Corina back.
Karina, yeah, I think we have time for a short amount of questions. We'll eat a little bit into your lunch. Then we have a relaxed program in the afternoon. Do we have microphones, roving microphones? Do we have microphones? Okay. Sure, yeah. I thought that. I mean, you may already have some practical questions about what happens the rest of the day and things like this, but let's start with the thoughts or the questions about the research program overall, the structure maybe, the direction, but particularly the cities. So anybody, can you just, if you just gave your name and organisation if you're asking a question, please? Wow, silence. We answered all the questions. Well, I'm going to ask a question, Mark. In terms of the site visits, after lunch we'll be meeting downstairs.
That's a practical question.
Yeah, a very practical question. Just where we'll be going and roughly how long it'll take, because these are important matters. So.
Yeah. Okay. The idea is we have to take the subway. Yeah. Okay. Line 1, which is the red one, and we go direction to the Besós. So we have Adrián, Arnau, and me. We will bring you to there. Okay. We will split in 4 groups because, well, if everybody's coming, we have to do smaller groups to do the walk, because if not, it's too many people only for one group. And the idea is we will start at Meridiana to see a transformation in Meridiana. There will be Neda from our team also joining us, so we will do these 4 groups, and we will explain you the transformation through an area, starting in Meridiana, Canopia, then walking through the Poblenou superblock to then Cristòfol de Moura and Bolivia, and just walking around that area looking for, well, we will see some urban allotments in the superblock also, but from outside. And mainly that's the planning for this afternoon. I hope it doesn't rain. Well, for one way, it's okay, it's raining, but to do the visit, it's not so nice to do it. But I think this afternoon, it's supposed not to be raining. So we have to go all together by subway. It's just like 4 or 5 stops, not far away from here.
And the idea is we'll meet together and leave at 2 o'clock?
We were supposed to be there at 2 o'clock, but it's okay if we are there at 2:15, no problem.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then just because this is going to be the final words before we leave, I guess. We do have dinner. It's included for all of you at 7:30 at the Novotel. There's only one Novotel, I think, in the city centre.
It's Novotel. Yeah, it's really close where we are doing the visit. It's in Diagonal, close to the Canopy Park that we will see this afternoon. So, and it's on the rooftop. And again, I hope it doesn't rain. But it's over there. Yeah, it's very close to where we will be finishing the visit. Yeah.
Who could have predicted?
But we are having lunch before here.
Oh, yeah, before we're leaving, yeah. But everybody's voice will be straining
for
by
the metro.
Okay, so back to technical questions.
One second, practical question here.
Yeah,
Tickets
please.
for the you can buy one ticket for one ride, or maybe a card with 10 travels, so in the machines. Or one-day ticket. The evening dinner, it's over there, so it's very close where we will be finishing the visit. So it's like 5 minutes or 10 minutes walk from after the dinner. Yeah, but it's anyway, it's Barcelona, it's walkable. I mean, from Glorias to here, you can walk. But it's easy to get the metro or a bus or whatever. Yeah.
Okay, so we thought about the practical things. I guess stay with your groups, stay safe, be aware of your surroundings and when you're taking photos and possessions and things like that. But yeah, we have time for some questions. So please, if there's any...
Or 2 hours and a half.
Yeah, so we have a microphone, please. Microphone. Down here, thank you.
Hello, thank you so much for the opportunity to ask a question about the population engagement in the project. I can see that the academic parties were very engaged and also the government, the local government, but my curiosity is how was the population actually engaged in the Conexus project? Anybody who would like to answer? Thank you so much.
Sure. Well, I think one of the things that I can very quickly cover is that there is right now live a result of the COVID impacts was that we developed a methodology for collaborative mapping online, and there is what's called a public participatory GIS or volunteered information approach based on an online survey mechanism. And Giovanna and Orsa particularly will be talking about this in one of the sessions tomorrow. And this is talking about like what do people feel about their local place. Also asking some difficult, challenging things in some respects, understanding where people come from in the city and how that affects their perspectives. And this is one thing we didn't really cover, actually, looking at also the differences and the challenges from gender equalities, diversity, inclusion perspectives. Are different people of different ages finding uses for spaces and are they conflicting or uniting and so on? So I think that's something that's live and will be reported in due course. All of the Life Labs have come together directly with a broad range of participants. I mean, we have the statistics in terms of the numbers, but behind that is a meaningful story around meeting on site, organising workshops, meeting with schools and so on. And from Turin and from Buenos Aires, I think also Barcelona, we'll hear those examples, I think, in the social cultural session. I guess one of the most challenging things is really around the engaging SMEs and businesses, if I'm totally honest, because there's the profit motive. And so again, in this sort of this surveying and so on, we're thinking what are the business opportunities, but in reality, in urban nature-based solutions, because it's difficult to enclose those green spaces and then charge people to enter, it can be a bit more challenging in terms of understanding how businesses can make a value out of the work. And that's a particularly challenging issue in terms of making sure we reach environmental justice priorities, yeah? So you know, the social enterprises really come in here. So things like stewardship can come with different funding models where it's not necessarily just marketized. You know, providing services for the city that are delivering health and well-being outcomes and bringing together a range of different opportunities means that those kind of businesses can work in quite creative ways as well as the contractors, the engineering contractors and so on. And all of those have direct relationships with the citizens. But I think the key thing is to talk to the planners. I mean, the guys from Buenos Aires couldn't come, sadly, but they have like a whole urban anthropology unit which is focusing on exactly this and developing good methodologies, guidelines for direct involvement of cities in the project. Yeah, I think Stefan had a quick question.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I have a question that is perhaps a little bit going beyond addressing the living labs and the partner cities. I just wanted to say that I found this really amazing this morning, this wealth of results that have come out of this project, from concrete actions on the ground to education, learning, to so things that are not material in the first place, to clever tools like the Urban Agricultural Observatory or so that are also at a different level, so to say. So I think this is wonderful, really. This was not, say, I have been involved in this project over 4 years or so, maybe not directly in the day-to-day work. And so I'm staring here and say, wow, that has also happened. It was not on my mind so much. Also, there came some messages out from different participants today, like I think it was Jonathan who deplored a little bit that this is so short, the project. Also, Martin was saying something similar. Can't we, now we understand, so to say, what is going and what is not going. So can't we continue? And then one can also see that there is a these high-level reports on nature-based solutions that that have been produced over involving all the different people from different NBS projects. And I wonder whether it would be also possible to get into a dialogue, into also a kind of high-level dialogue with the funding agency, the European Union, to discuss also how these programs can be further developed. Because we have the experience now and we know that some things go well, but other things are creating problems. And I think if the European Union spends so much money on this, maybe we could also support them a little bit in doing the programs even better or differently. This is not a criticism as such, but I think it would be helpful, because when we stop, the knowledge gets lost again, and others are starting anew and in reinventing some of the things that we have already learned.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of maintaining the knowledge and the evidence, of course, we embedded everything in OPLA, and that was a deliberate choice. OPLA will continue well beyond, and the project website won't disappear, and all the materials will be there. But I think in terms of the social networks, you made a very good point. I think there is this existing dialogue. And let's be honest, Conexus didn't happen in a vacuum. I mean, it brought together many existing dialogues and collaborations and projects as well. And we've heard about Breathe Respiro. It was already happening before the project and very well established. And Alexis from University of Chile was very strongly in contact with his SLU. I think I came to Sao Paulo with your help, Stefan. So those existing dialogues and relationships were there before, and hopefully we've served to strengthen them. And at the very beginning, the idea was to really bring people together to get to know one another, and so on. I don't know, Corinna and Denisa, if you have any perspective on that as well.
Yeah, I was wondering, we are approaching the final months of Conexus, and besides so many wonderful products like papers, methodologies, plans, guides, many things that this community has produced in 4 years together. Could we do a kind of more specific manifestos or something like this directly towards biodiversity loss, climate change? This climate emergency is scaring. For Brazil, we have experienced 4 different climate extremes in less than 1 year. Fires in the center, a dry season never seen before. In the Amazon, we could walk in the riverbed because there was no water at all. A heat wave in central Brazil, and now a flooding, a historic flooding, killing people in the south. So as one of the products, we could think about a kind of manifesto for each sector that nature-based solutions could be. It is the basis for reaction, for adaptation, for mitigation in different scales.
Yeah, I agree strongly with that. I think it is time to do this. I don't know if people around the room are feeling the same way, but and in terms of responses, there's 2 things really. One is the enhanced kind of repository of materials that I think Humboldt and others will be strongly leading in Latin America. I don't think it's a secret. There's going to be this like sort of mirror image of the OPLA case study finder, which is in the Latin, together with the Interlace project and you know, under the banner of that kind of enhanced dialogue. But what you're talking about is something much more, right? My ask would be, and in terms of responding also to Stefan's point on this, if we're genuinely going to look towards that kind of learning from Global South context in a lot more detail, it's a genuine thing. I went to Sao Paulo and was absolutely startled to see that the road camber is so much more severe than in Europe. And it's like, why is it like this? You know, you trip over the curb and everything. And then we were sat outside a cafe, maybe just having a beer at the end of one of these sessions, and then seeing a scooter, you know, like a motorbike scooter washed down the road in such heavy rain. You're thinking, okay, this is what Sheffield is going to face in the future. You know, if we carry on this path, this hard landscape is what's leading to these problems. You know, we need to depave these areas. But if I'm going to build nature-based solutions in Sheffield that look like they do now, they're not going to be robust to that. And I'm speaking to Paolo Pellegrino and yourselves. And how can we make a much more robust learning from the Global South? And my plea for that would be that we look to, in the future programs, if there are going to be these opportunities, you know, let's be more radical. Let's have the projects led by the Latin American side. I think that would be a really, really beneficial drive forwards, and it would really propel us on some of these issues around inclusivity and learning more from indigenous knowledges. When I talk to people in Sheffield, if I use the word indigenous knowledge, it means something very different, let me promise you. Yeah? We can talk about local knowledges in the UK perspective. So it's really difficult to understand, you know, when you're not coming from that perspective, what are you meaning? How can we propel ourselves forward and learn from your approaches, you know, living nature with people, nature for people, those kind of messages I think are really fundamental. I've been talking too much. Are there any more questions? Yeah.
Yeah, I will pop in. For example, I went really quickly through the presentation, but things that I think are interesting. For example, we said the attitude. We said yes to almost everything. So Giuliano, no, you came here to take samples, and it was an honor trying to help you getting those samples. So this will help to get some knowledge relating air quality and vegetation in cities and different cities of the world. So that's one, saying yes and helping. It's a way of making progress and continuing with this investigation.
the investigation with Sheffield and Andre and biodiversity, probably this one, doing it in a 5 or 10 year period, it will be nice to see, okay, what's the evolution when we went there and measured, no, more than 100 points in different cities, NBS and biodiversity, how were they in 24 or 23 or 22, and how is in 30 or in 32. So times matters, and we will also measure climate change, other impacts that will be taking place in our cities, how it's reacting, NBS and biodiversity. The other is we haven't finished yet, and I think one good thing is that the City Hall is behind this, so we will continue. We use the project to try new methodologies and try to do new research. No? For example, the CREAF was working with air quality in relation to vegetation, so doing this type of investigations and then trying to explain it in a simple manner to the citizens, it's also interesting. So yes, you're growing food in cities, there is pollution, but there's no risk, and we measure this. That's important, and that's something that we learned from the project. And they take Corina and the team took samples from a urban allotment that it's in the middle of Nus de la Trinitat. So there's more than 350,000 cars going through that area per day. So that's very important, and there's no toxics or no pollutants going to the leaf, which is, I think, good news. The other is we work with the Institut Botànic of Barcelona, testing a new methodology, not capturing pollinizers and doing pictures at different urban allotments to show. So in a future, the idea is to have this, not now, but in a future, probably it will be a citizen science project. So you don't have to capture, because in a city there are few pollinizers. If you capture them to measure them, it's like, okay, it doesn't make sense, but we have to test new methodologies and try to learn it first from the scientific point of view, and then maybe citizens or other people or entities can join us. So that's another thing that we did with Conexus, another opportunity. So I think it's to be continued.
Wonderful. And in terms of the long-term perspective, the baseline, but also finding ways of contributing funding towards the management and the maintenance of these things when we build them, right? Because if we walk away, the quality disappears, and then they become a detractor, not an attractor to citizens. Are there any further questions? We will have plenty of time in the workshops. We will have time in the plenary at the end, but please, if there's anything you want to go for some lunch or coffee? It's okay. So, before we finish and just say thank you to everybody, I would remind you, please be here again tomorrow morning for 9. We have, a kick-off with a keynote speaker for each workshop. We're going to have some challenges of getting people between rooms and things. You've given your options for your workshop, but that's just to get a sense of the room sizes and so on. So at the beginning of the day, we'll make it clear which rooms you're to go to for each session. So really my job at the moment, then before we just wrap up for today, is to thank our facilitators. Karina and Denise for a great job. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you to all of our cities and to our work package leaders. I mean, they together have really driven the project. So for all the work package leaders in the cities, thank you also. And together, the keynote speakers, so Fleur and Maria, and also Mark for warming up and really doing a great job and bringing us marmalade. If you're going to speak, Paddington, right? Actually, it's about Peru, but it's just a wonderful thing to have such a nice gift. So great. Thank you very much to the keynote speakers. Thank you to Maria and to Mark. And great. So we will join you downstairs for lunch, and then we'll be together at 2 o'clock. Yeah? So thank you very much. Oh, sorry. Oh, yeah, the translation equipment. Please return. And also, don't leave your belongings here because we won't come back here today. Yeah?